Most people never become elite closers because of one specific reason. They treat sales like a set of tactics instead of a skill set. They chase scripts or fragments of what they've seen people doing on social media, and memorize lines and quick fixes. And they try to shortcut the parts that actually matter. The emotional intelligence, the biopsychology, the questions that actually move the needle and allow you to have a depth and a real understanding of what it truly means to shift someone's decision. This course is the complete opposite of that, because everything I'm teaching here is going to be what I call anti-sales. What you're about to go through isn't a collection of tricks and tactics, it's the complete skill set that I developed over the past decade, from landing my first sales job to closing over 200 million in high ticket sales. And the same format that all the people that have undergone my mentorship, hundreds of people that are all now earning 10, 20, 30k a month. And even better, it's all structured in the exact order that you need to become a world-class closer. Not a script reader, not a performer, but someone who can actually guide a decision, a difficult decision, with confidence and clarity. And I can assure you, you won't need to watch any more sales videos after watching this course, because this will allow you to reach a level that most people never even scratch the surface of. The insights that I'm showing you here are essentially compressing my years of experience into a tiny video. And in turn, that'll allow you to compress potentially years of wasted time into months of action and focus skills. And that could be the difference between staying trapped, earning the same amount of money year after year, versus building the kind of freedom that allows you to work less and earn more. So please take it seriously, take notes, go deep. This is the start of you becoming the kind of closer that people will love to buy from. Let's begin. I remember sitting with a closer who approached me for a one-on-one session, and he was stuck at around the 4 or 5k a month mark, wanting to move into remote high ticket sales and hit those 10, 20k months. So I asked him a pretty simple question. I said, the prospects that you deal with now, what is their most common pain? And he said it's that they want to earn more money. I was like, yeah, but what's actually behind that? And he didn't know. He went quiet. And that's when I realized that most closers, most salespeople don't learn this. I've closed over $200 million in high ticket sales. I've trained hundreds of reps, and the pattern is always the same. Average closers, average salespeople, they collect surface level problems, surface level desires, whilst elite closers facilitate real change and have impactful conversations. I'm going to give you an overview of the exact checklist or toolkit or weapons or resources that I believe you need to include to have an impactful discovery. Some of these bleed into each other a little bit, but this is sort of my mental framework that allows me to hold a frame during a call, and I know that if I hit every single one of these marks, there's no chance that person isn't buying. The top closers in the world don't just listen to the first response. They try to figure out what the prospect isn't saying. What's behind that first statement? The regret, the identity behind that statement. And that's what this video is all about. It's not about interrogating a prospect and just reeling off a big long list of questions, but learning to actually take someone from a surface level problem to that emotional clarity and the belief that they need to make a change, and your solution, which is the pitch, which comes next, is the most obvious solution to fix what they're going through and to help them get them to where they want to go. And once you can understand this, everything changes. Your close rate, how much you enjoy sales calls, how prospects respond to you, literally everything. So what I've noticed with closers that are stuck between 3k, 4k, even all the way up to 10k a month, most of the time they are completely stuck at the surface level. They ask good questions, they have a good script that they follow, their initial question is usually right on the money, but they accept that surface level response. Now, what do I mean by a surface level response? That could be, I just want to make more money. It could be that I need more customers for my business. It could be that I want to leave the UK. It could be that I want to change my job. It could be that I want to develop a new skill. They take that surface level response as the real driving force behind the reason why they're on the call. And it almost never is. There's always more emotion behind that initial statement. And ultimately, once we pull that out of the prospect, that impact and that emotion is what's going to actually drive the decision. And the consequence of that is that the pitch from there falls completely flat because there's no emotional depth and you don't actually fully understand why the prospect's on the call. When I've been reviewing closers' calls, 80% of the time, the main problem is that they just don't go deep enough and they're way too surface level. And a lot of salespeople out there, this is more like lower level salespeople, through their discovery, it's way more like data driven. So for instance, let's say you work for a marketing company, you might just be asking about what ROAS they get, how long they've been using XYZ agency for, how much they're spending on ads. And it's just a data-driven discovery when ultimately you could collect all that information on a type form before the call. And the closing call could just be deep-rooted in emotion and actually facilitating that change. If you just use data on a discovery process, you'll get a response like, I just want to improve my ROAS. But if your discovery process is emotional, you'll get a response like, I'm fucking exhausted and I don't know what to do next and I'm worried about my business. One of those is going to move the needle much harder than the other. And I bet you can guess which one it is. A good stress test about this is when a prospect gives you a response, think to yourself, is this what's keeping them awake at 2, 3 a.m? Is this what's running through their head when they're lying awake at night? Or is it something a little bit deeper than this? Surface problems or surface desires are often just the tip of the iceberg. It's what's beneath that keeps people up at night. And that's what plays on someone's mind. A contrasting example of this is surface level would be, I just want to make more money. But a deep dive into that pain point will uncover that earning more money allows him to be the sort of provider that he's always wanted to be, the sort of man that he's always wanted to be, and be able to provide the sort of life he wants for his family and his children, as well as having the time freedom to actually spend it with them. So what most closers do is they have these surface level responses and then they dive straight into the pitch or start telling them about the pitch halfway through the discovery process, and it just breaks up the entire call. Causes huge sales resistance, it doesn't facilitate any sort of impactful change whilst you're on the call, and usually you'll get a response like, I need to go and think about it, or I'm going to call a few other people and see what they can offer me. And you won't know how to handle it because you don't really have any substance whatsoever. So what I'm going to give you on this video is a checklist. This can be used as a guide. By no means is this everything you possibly need to conduct a perfect discovery, but it gives you an amazing introduction and it gives you all the tools so you can pretty much take it away, implement it straight away. And I promise you it's going to change a lot. The way you need to view this checklist is almost like a reminder sheet. You need to do a deep dive and understand how to actually articulate these sort of questions and foster these emotional states in the prospect. But once you know that, there's other videos that I've uploaded around the details behind a lot of these sections. But this can act as your general framework and reference point so that when you're on a call, you can take a glance at it and think, have I touched on this? Have I touched on that? Have I created enough impact in this area? So without further ado, let's dive into it and look at the first aspect. So the first element is current situation. So what this really means is the facts behind the situation. Quite simply, just the facts. That's all we're looking for right now because we can't sell to people if we don't know the facts around the current situation. This completely depends on your offer. All you need to do, quite simply, to understand current situation is what are the facts that you need to know as a closer to have a full picture of this individual. Not the pains, not the desires, just the facts. So often that can be like what they do for work, how long have they done it for, maybe are they married, or if you're selling B2B, there might be some facts that you need around the business. But ultimately, these are the mundane details. Do they commute to work? How many hours do they work? Energy levels, that sort of thing. These are just the facts because without the facts, you can't sell anything. If you don't get a clear enough picture of someone's current situation, sometimes you can trip up. You can make assumptions, because it's very easy to just categorize all your prospects into the same identity. So you need to gather the facts to begin with. The second element, this is going to be your anchor through the entire call. Now, this is where people start to trip up, and this is where people start to accept surface level answers. Now, What we're looking for here is a very clear desired state and a desired outcome. What do they actually want to achieve by using your service, by learning the skill that you teach, by the fitness program that you offer, by the business solution, the training, whatever? What do they ultimately want to achieve? What's the outcome that they're looking for? But the answer to that question is always going to be surface level. How do we push deeper from that? And that's using things like the staircase method, which is a method that I teach, which is on another video. I've done a full video on it. This is where we break down and dig deep into that desired state and outcome. So let's say someone says, I want to make more money. Why is making more money so important to you right now? How much money? Why that number? How would that change things for you? Who else does this affect? How would it affect them? When you've actually achieved all that and you're earning that sort of money and you're providing that sort of life, how does that actually change things for you, I guess, personally? It's these sort of questions, these structured, probing questions that will give you the real impact behind that desired state and outcome. And this is what acts as our anchor throughout the entire call, because every other question feeds into what they actually want out of their life. And we can also connect this desired state and this desired outcome to the identity. This is the aspirational identity. So asking questions like, when you live in that life, who do you become? Or who do we unlock? Or what's different about how you see yourself? This is going to plant some seeds for the identity-based closing and challenging later in the call. And the key here with desired state, a question that you have to ask, how long have you wanted that for? So understanding how long they've wanted that desired state, that desired outcome for, is going to give us so much ammunition to deal with the limitations later in the call. And then there's element 3. This is pain. Have we created enough pain during the discovery process around the prospect's current situation? Because without any current pain in their current situation, the chances of them making a decision that moves them away from the current situation is going to be minimized. Now, again, most closers trip up here and accept surface level responses like, I need to make more money, or I don't earn enough money. Rather than digging deeper into that and asking, why don't you earn enough money? What do you mean by not enough? Who else is this affecting? What are you unable to do with the amount of money that you're earning right now? And how long has this been going on for? This is, again, layered probing questions, which is building our case. And there's a lot of signs once you hit real pain. And when people are just starting out as closers, they struggle with this a little bit because they never push it far enough. You'll know when you push it too far, and it's better to push it too far than not push it at all. And a lot of closers trip up here and they don't know when they've actually found real pain. Now, most closers, salespeople, when they're just starting out, don't push far enough. I would prefer you to push too far than not far enough. You'll realize when you've hit real pain through body language, through the tonality of the prospect. Maybe they look away, maybe they look down, maybe they take a long pause before answering, a sigh. You'll feel the weight of it, and it's at that point that you should feel comfortable to move on. It all comes down to emotion and impact. Now, there's a fourth element. There's 2 types here, but they feed into each other. For high ego prospects, people who feel like life's pretty good or they can do things on their own, have you installed enough doubt in their mind? Have you planted a seed of doubt? It's productive doubt. Asking questions like, you seem like a really sharp guy, like what stopped you from solving this already? Or if you would have been able to figure this out on your own, wouldn't you have already sorted it out by now? Now, on the other side of this, there's some prospects who might be in a low belief state. They might not really believe in themselves. And we want to foster that belief for them and want to encourage them. So we need to show them through the sales process that they are more capable than they think. So showing them that they've made hard decisions in the past, and how did that pan out? Are they in a place now where they feel like they can trust themselves and be empowered to make a decision? And the reason why this matters is overconfident prospects, they need to see that there is a gap. But underconfident prospects need to see their capability. Because if you don't do this, both are going to crop up as objections later in the call and be much harder to deal with. Essentially, through this process, both need to realize that they need help and they're ready to receive it and ready to take action. Now on to the fifth element, potentially one of the most important elements of the call, and that's limitations, behavioural limitations that prospects have placed on themselves. And these are often future objections in disguise. This is where we start to uncover why the prospect isn't at the place that they actually want to be, that strong desired state, that strong desired outcome. Sort of why they aren't there already. What stopped them? Have they had help in the past already? Why did the help that they've had in the past not work out? Or if they didn't have help in the past, why have they not sought help? Now, all of the reasons behind why previous programs didn't work, or the reasons that they didn't get help, or the reasons that they haven't achieved what they want out of life yet, these are all going to often be external excuses to begin with. And we need to take them free from being an external excuse. Things like, I didn't have time, I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the money. These are all excuses. And move them to internal limitations and get them to admit that it's fear, or that they've been too comfortable. Maybe they've been procrastinating and putting things off and kidding themselves. We need to pull that limitation out and help them to overcome it here and now by showing them, which is the next point, the cost of inaction. So what happens if they continue to hold on to this limitation of this fear of failure and this inability to move forwards? What if they keep holding on to that? What if they don't actually make a change? What happens then? We need there to be some future pain here, because future pain is a massive needle mover. This is where we are ultimately holding up that mirror and showing the prospect that they have got in their way up until now. Their behaviours, their actions, their decisions, their mindset is the reason why they aren't where they want to be. And if they continue holding on to it, what is that future going to look like? And paint a picture. Because there's only one thing people run away from more than current pain, and it's the avoidance of future pain. And through this cost of inaction, through showing these limitations and how they've affected their life up until now, we're attempting to show them the cost of staying where they are and the cost of their future situation is far greater than the cost of our service. Now, the other aspect of the call is, have we used identity throughout the call to make that shift? Because often people fall back to the habits and the beliefs of the identity that they build themselves around. But often for people to make a big change and a big decision, they need to step into a new identity. And we do that through our language and through our questioning. People basically buy services based on who they want to become. So a great way to do this is to separate the past self of the prospect, the version of them that hasn't got what they want up until now, and the behaviours and actions of that version of them, versus the aspirational identity. This is the version of them that they foresee them being in future, the version of them that has the level of success that they're looking for. And looking at the bridge between those two versions of the prospect and what that gap is that they need to cross in order to actually become that person. And once we separate that identity, we can dig into it further and say, the version of you that's already at 20k a month, what beliefs does he have? What sort of actions does he take? And when we look at the version of you that you want to become, is he the sort of person that lets fear get in his way and control him and control his decisions and makes him hesitant? And we do this because if the prospect can see themselves as someone who takes action and someone who doesn't hesitate, ultimately they will step into that identity and ultimately move them forward to a decision. The eighth element is urgency. Now, a lot of closers trip up here and they believe urgency comes from fake deadlines and telling the prospect they've only got a certain amount of spaces. That's not true. Real urgency is backed by emotion. There's internal urgency. This is when they feel as though they need to change for themselves on the inside. So asking questions like, how long have you wanted this for? What's any different that you would actually step outside your comfort zone and make a change now? Or was there something that happened recently that allowed you to make that shift where you realise you have to make the change now rather than keep delaying things? Or there's external urgency, and we get this through probing. Maybe they've got a baby on the way. Maybe they've got a sick parent they need to take care of. Maybe they're encroaching on a certain birthday that they thought they'd be at a different place in life. We need to be uncovering the urgency, because if not, then it makes it a lot easier for a prospect to just say, I'll go away and think about it. And the ninth element of a successful discovery call is ownership. has the prospect ultimately owned their shit, or are they still blaming external circumstances? And most importantly, are they owning the fact that in order to get to that desired outcome, that desired state, that they are in control of it? Asking a question as simple as, who controls whether this changes or whether you stay where you are? Getting them to say, I do, means they can't blame external circumstances anymore. And 10th, pretty simple one here, have we uncovered if there's a support structure in place? What do I mean by a support structure? This could be a partner, this could be a parent, but ultimately, is there another influence in this decision? And are they supportive of it? Or how do we get them to be supportive? Through this, we're looking to prevent as many partner objections later in the goal as humanly possible. And element 11, this is the final one. And this isn't like a question, this is more of a feeling. Have you created a perception shift through the call? A successful sales call, and actually being that facilitator of change, is, do they see the situation different than when they started the call? Do they view the problem differently? Do they have a new level of ownership around the problem? Do they have a new realization that they do need to make a change and maybe they've been in the way up until now? Have you moved them from just being problem aware to consequence aware? That perception shift is what's going to allow them to feel like they actually need to change now. And now on to some bonuses and things that you need to include. And this is like the glue that holds these frameworks together and enables you to have a successful conversation. The first is reactive questioning and looping. So this is why most scripts fail, because what scripts do, it's like long question, long question, long question, long question. When reactive questioning is, if a prospect says, I need more leads, it's like, why do you feel like you need more leads? It's more reactive. And this isn't something you can script because you're reacting to the language that the prospect uses. If you're just using a script, that's more like an interview. It's more like a box ticking exercise, not a conversation. You can only have a real conversation if you're listening to what a prospect says and then digging into the words that they use and the statements that they make. And that's impossible to script, and that's how to have a really valuable conversation. And then it comes down to looping. So a prospect might say something like, I'm exhausted. And an elite closer will just go, exhausted? And the prospect will say, yeah, I'm absolutely drained. I literally get no sleep. I'm working all the time. I've even got my laptop open like when my partner's asleep next to me. I literally feel like I'm running on empty all the time and I can't even really communicate with people. And you've just got all of that depth from just repeating back a word with like a certain body language and tone. By doing this, we are actively listening. We are being genuinely curious about the language that the prospect's using. And that's enabling us to formulate the most reactive question that we can find. We don't need to use long words for this. We don't need to formulate a perfect question. That's not how impactful conversations work. Often we're just listening and reacting to what the prospects say. But we know we've got this internal checklist in our mind, or we might have it up on a screen next to where the call is, as a guide. But ultimately we're having a real conversation. But in the back of our mind, there is a structure to it. And that is how elite closers perform. Now, a big thing here is, when do you actually know when you've finished a discovery process? At what point do you start pissing off the prospect, like by asking too many questions? How do you know when it's actually done? And I don't have a real answer for you here because it's different depending on the conversation that you have. But the biggest thing I can give you is the energy will shift. It'll shift from the prospect like just being interested to wanting a change. It'll take them from like a surface level problem to asking about a real solution. They're bought in on you and they're sort of waiting for you to present the solution because they really want it and they're ready for this change. More than anything, it's a feeling, and you get that by not relying on a screen. You get it by actually interacting with the person across from you and realizing that this person actually wants a change, and the best sense move here is to show them this solution, and that's ultimately what's going to guide them to taking action and making a change. Now, the bigger picture here, like this is the meta overall lesson of a good discovery. A good discovery process is not about you. It's not about the smartest questions that you can formulate on ChatGPT. It's not about controlling the call. The discovery is mainly about you being that leader, you being that facilitator of change, you holding up that honest mirror for the prospect to look themselves in the eye, see what's been holding them back, see what happens further down the line if they don't make a change. That's your job. It's helping the prospect see what they've been avoiding and guiding them to the change that they actually want in their life that leads to the result and the desired outcome that they've been wanting for a long ass time. And how you can implement this is take this sheet. If you want it, you can DM me the word discovery on Instagram and I'll send it across to you for free. You can keep this open when you're on a sales call, and this is going to be a constant reminder, and listen to your calls back and think, did I hit all of those notes there? Or was there still room for improvement? We can also look for clues in the objections. What objections came up and what holes in my discovery caused that objection? Because the closers who actually master discovery, they don't just make more money, they help way more people get to where they want to go. And that's the difference between pushing someone over the line and guiding them over the line. But that's also the difference between 5k a month and 50k a month. It's the difference between helping 5 people achieve something and helping 50 people achieve something. Having absolute clarity and certainty and being that trusted advisor, being detached from the sale, and in some cases, actually changing some people's lives. This checklist changed my entire approach to calls. And again, if you want it, feel free to drop me a DM on Instagram with the word discovery and I'll send it over for free. Ciao. Your prospects are lying to you, not maliciously, but they're giving you surface level objections and problems while the real pain stays buried. And the reason you can't actually get to the truth, it's not your questions, it's not your script, it's your tonality. So over the next 15 minutes or so, I'll show you how to use tonality in the right way so you can pull out the real pain, the real problems, the real objections behind what the prospect's been telling you up until now. Because here's what I've learned after closing over 250 million in high ticket sales. It's not about what you say, it's how you say it. Look, most salespeople think it's all about crafting the perfect question, the perfect response. They might say, oh, what's your biggest challenge? Or what stopped you from hitting your current goals? Or what's the most important thing for you right now? These rigid sort of questions. But here's the very big problem. If you ask even the most perfect question in the world with the wrong tone, you'll get garbage answers every single time. You'll get responses like, I don't know, or they might just say, oh, I just want to earn more money, or we're actually doing okay, we're just seeing what's out there, or we're just looking for more information. Do any of these responses sound familiar to you? That is because the prospects feel that you're just another salesperson running through a script, or even worse, they think you actually don't care about the problems and you're just looking to get a sale out of them. And as soon as a prospect feels that, the brain will just put up a wall. But if you actually master tonality, you will not believe some of the responses that you'll get from people. They'll open up and tell you things that they've never even told another human being before, never mind another salesperson. There was quite literally a study in the 1960s by a guy called Albert Mehrabian. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I could be butchering it, but it was based around communication. And they found that 93% of communication is non-verbal. That means only 7% of what you say, literally what you say, actually matters. The rest is nothing to do with it. It's all to do with tonality and body language. Obviously, if we're selling over Zoom, body language might not come in as much as it would do in real life, but that's why we make sure our appearance and our camera setting and our microphone are all on point. That's like the digital version of body language. But that means you're relying on your tonality even more. Most salespeople are literally fighting basically with their arm tied behind the back because they're ignoring the 70, 80, even 90% of what really matters when it comes to closing someone, and that's your tonality. So let me break down for you the top 4 tonalities that I train all my top closers in that separates them from every other salesperson out there. Come on. Okay, so tonality 1 is concerned. This is when you want them to see the consequences of not changing. Instead of saying, what happens if you don't change this? Try something like this. Have you given it any thought as to what happens if you don't make a change? Did you hear that shift? This isn't me being pushy.
This is me being like a doctor who's genuinely concerned about your health if you do nothing. When a prospect hears that tone, they'll feel like you genuinely care about their problems. Not because you want to make a sale, but because you know where they're heading. Okay, time to look at tonality number 2. Curious. Now, this is for discovery section of the call. When you want to gain information from a prospect and you want them to open up, but you don't want them to feel like they're being interrogated. So instead of saying, how long have you been doing that for? You could say, okay. How long have you been doing it that way for? The second example invites them to share more. The first feels like you're building a case against them. Curiosity creates safety, and safety is what will get you the truth. So the third we're going to look at is certainty. This is for transitions or for the pitch section of the call. You might say, based on everything you've told me, I know we can help you. Would you like me to explain how we can help, or where do you want to go from here? That's not arrogance, that's certainty. And certainty is what people are actually buying. They don't want someone who's just pretty sure they can help. They want someone who is certain they can fix the problems for them. Now, the fourth is the biggest, potentially also the most challenging. And it literally is challenging. Oh wow. And I've just realised the 4 C's. We've invented something live today. Now, we use the challenging tone when we want someone to see what the patterns are and challenge them supportively to break them. Let's say we've got a tricky prospect during the objection handling stage of the call and they say, I always make decisions this way. This is when we would bring this tone into action. And we might want to say, okay, well, if you've always made decisions that way, but you aren't where you want to be right now. Okay, let's use an example. Let's say we're in the objection handling part of the call and a prospect has said to us, I always make decisions this way, I just want time to think about it. This is when we might enact this challenging tone and we might say, okay, well, if you've always made decisions this way, but you aren't where you want to be, would it be fair to say you might need to change how you approach your decision-making process to get to where you need to go? You know, we're not attacking them when it comes to challenging. We're just holding up a mirror to try and help them see where they're going wrong and help them get to where they want to go. Most prospects have never actually had someone challenge them from like a place of their best interest. When you do that, and when you do it right, often that's a wake-up call that they've been waiting for. So these are the 4 tonalities. We've invented the 4 C's while we're here on this video, but concerned, curious, certain, and challenging. Now let me show you the technique that gets prospects to tell you something that they've never told another salesperson in their entire life. This is for when you've tried everything. You might have hit every single note on the sales call up until now, and they come to the price and you still get slapped around the face with the, I need to think about it. Here's what most salespeople do wrong. Come on, John, we've been on the phone for an hour now. What do you really need to think about? Guess what? That's just gonna trigger the defenses even more. Instead, try something like this. John, can I ask you something? And this is just between you and me. It's off the record. Like, what's really behind you putting more time and distance between where you are right now and getting the life that you actually want? Do you feel that shift? So let me break down here basically what's happened. So the first thing we're going to do is ask for the permission. We ask for the permission so we're not just bulldozing them with our opinion or a question, and they're basically inviting us to offer a suggestion. Second, said something like between you and me. This is just going to create a bit of intimacy between you and the prospect, and it's sort of like that friend approach, like you're putting your arm around their shoulder and just trying to help them person to person. Thirdly is that pause before the final question. This is called verbal pacing, and it's going to create some tension. And the fourth, we use what's really behind, not what is there left to think about, but what's really behind it. That ultimately implies that there's something deeper than the surface level, and it invites them to tell you. And here is the magic. Deliver this with real concern, with a tone that shows you actually care about solving the problem. And I promise you, it's almost impossible for them to not open up. And now let me show you how to use tonality to dig deeper into a prospect's pain. Because ultimately, prospects don't buy solutions to problems, they buy relief from pain. And most of their pain is emotional, it's not logical. People make decisions based on emotion and they justify it with logic. So let's say you're on a sales call and a prospect says to you, "We've been struggling to hit our revenue targets." This is what most salespeople would say. Okay, what's been your biggest challenge to hit them so far? That's basically just a logical discovery. It's boring and it doesn't move anyone. Instead, maybe try something like this. That must be really stressful for you. How long's this been going on for? And what does that mean for your team? And I guess what's this been like for you over the past few months? Do you see what I'm doing there? I'm not just finding out what the problem is, I'm finding out what the emotional impact behind that problem actually carries to the prospect. Because when someone finds the real cost, the emotional cost behind a problem, that's when they'll stop shopping around and they'll actually start buying. To round things off, let me give you 3 advanced patterns that I teach all my top closers. Okay, let's look at pattern 1. The empathy bridge. So when a prospect shares something emotional with you, let's say they say, "Well, I'm just tired of being let down by agencies." We don't want to dive in straight away and try and solve it and say, "Well, this is why we're different, blah, 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 blah." The right response is to sit with it and pause and say, "That must be tough. How many times has this happened so far?" This empathy bridge allows the prospect to feel heard before just trying to fix them and before just trying to pitch. Okay, let's look at number 2. The assump challenge. So often prospects can say really limiting statements that we know aren't true. So a prospect might say something like, "I've literally tried everything." Instead of jumping to it and saying, "I doubt you have, otherwise you'd be exactly where you need to go." That's wrong. That's the wrong sort of challenge. We might want to challenge in a friendly way and say, "Everything? Really? Tell me everything you've tried so far." This is going to invite them to prove the point. And it's also going to prove that they haven't tried anything in a way that's not going to cause conflict. Now, this is a slightly different one. Number 3 is the future pace anchor. So this is when you want them to slow down and really feel the impact of what you're saying. So let's say we're painting what the solution actually looks like to the prospect, and we might say, "Imagine, John, in 6 months' time, you've finally fixed this problem. You're back up to earning 20k a month. You can take your family away on that holiday that you've been planning." I guess, how would that change things for you? What's different day to day? Who else would this change things for? This slower pace allows them to actually visualize the outcome. And once they can actually visualize it and see it and feel it, that's when they'll buy it. Now, before we wrap things up, let me show you the 3 biggest mistakes that closers use, that sales reps use, that is ultimately killing their deals. So the first mistake is matching a prospect's energy when they're negative. If they're frustrated, are stressed, or angry, you're just going to become part of the problem. Instead, stay calm and grounded. It's going to be your energy and your tonality that brings them back to center. Mistake number 2 is using the same tonality for every question. I hear salespeople that sound excited about absolutely everything, or curious about everything, or concerned about everything, or challenge prospects on everything. Your tone should match the purpose of your question. Discovery is curious. Pain exploration and sometimes objections is going to be concerned. And your pitch and closing is confident and certain. Now, I've saved the best for last. The third and final mistake, and it's the worst, is when people fake tonalities. Now, what do I mean by this? People can smell an inauthentic tone a mile away. If you don't actually genuinely care and you're just putting on some crazy pretend tonality, the prospect's going to be able to tell. The best way to deliver any of these tonalities is to actually embody that feeling. If someone has got a problem and it's very obvious, be concerned for them, care about them. Be genuinely curious about someone's current situation, how long they've been doing something for. Just being curious will serve you so well as a sales rep. And when it's very obvious that someone is just in their own way, or they're just delaying things, you can be challenging in that friendly way because you're trying to help them win. And when a prospect feels that, that'll make the biggest difference. The best tonality ultimately just comes from actually giving a damn. Look, here's the bottom line. You could have the best scripts in the world, you could have the best questions, you could have the best pitch, the best objection handling word tracks, but if you don't have the tonality to match, if it doesn't create trust, safety, and emotional connection, none of it matters. Prospects don't buy your solution, they buy how that solution makes them feel. If you master tonality, you will stop getting surface level responses. You'll get the real truth, the real pain behind why they're on the call to begin with. And ultimately, that is what closes deals. That's when you can turn 3K months into 20K months and sales can start becoming a career, not just a job. If you want to actually master high ticket sales and gain a remote position that gives you complete freedom of time, location, and finances, my Instagram details are below this video. Just drop me a DM and we can have a chat. Until next time, keep closing. Ciao. When most closers get stuck at 3 to 7K a month, it's rarely because they can't sell. It's usually because maybe they pitch too early or they hone in on a surface level pain point and miss the whole big picture. And then they deliver a perfectly memorized pitch. Maybe it's a presentation and the prospect just feels like it's a cookie cutter response and most of it's actually irrelevant to what they've gone through on the call. And when that happens, the buyer obviously doesn't feel understood because you've just given them a template response. That's going to mean that they disengage, and in most cases you're going to miss so many sales from this approach. A great pitch isn't a presentation. It's not a perfectly crafted response. It's not a list of features. It's not you showing how clever you are or how amazing your business is. It's actually more of a mirror. You're going to be actually mirroring the prospect's pains and desires, everything they've told you throughout the whole call. If the pitch doesn't feel as though it's designed for them and it's bespoke for their problems, then it's not going to land. People don't say yes to completely generic offers. They say yes to offers when it feels as though it solves the problem that they've been facing and it's actually going to get them to the desired outcome. And in this video, I'm going to break down how you can structure a pitch that actually delivers, that actually gets sales, a pitch that mirrors a prospect's desires, their pains, their emotional depth, and ultimately takes the prospect on this journey, taking them from where they are now to getting the actual result that they want and building trust along the way. This is where a lot of closers fall apart, and this is what separates the average from the elite. So to begin with, I want to establish the actual stakes behind pitching. Like, what's at stake? Online right now, everyone is so invested in the discovery process and the objection handling process, but the pitch still matters. It really matters. Because even if you have the perfect discovery and perfect objection handling, if your pitch doesn't really build clarity and certainty and trust, then it's going to be very hard for you to close a sale. So let's look at some of the common mistakes that people make. The first is that often closers pitch way too early, or they start pitching as they're going through the discovery. This is a mistake that I see all the time, and feel free to watch your own calls back and make sure that you're not doing this, because what a lot of closers do is the prospect will raise something, maybe a particular problem or something that they want, and that's maybe included in your offer or your service. So you'll tell them early. Ideally, the sections should be very separate. Your discovery process should all be about the prospect. Shouldn't be about your offer. You should not be mentioning anything about your offer, anything about your pitch, anything about your service for at least the first 20 minutes of the call. And then when the discovery process is finished, it's at that point you move in with the pitch. Another big mistake that I see with a lot of pitches out there is they unload on irrelevant benefits to the prospect. The prospect is on a call because they want you to take them from A to Z, quite simply, whether that's from away from a certain pain that they've been facing or towards a desire that they've been seeking. During your pitch, if you start telling them about, I don't know, awards that you've won or some irrelevant detail that's inside your program or your service that they don't really care about, prospects care about getting to where they want to go and they want to feel safe on that journey. So ideally, we don't need to dump features onto prospects. Pitches, realistically, I think can be 5 to 10 minutes most of the time. And you can deliver a killer pitch in 5 to 10 minutes. Us humans, our attention span is not too good. So 5 to 10 minutes of a well-crafted pitch is all you need. You don't need to unload features and benefits and have a 20-page presentation to close a sale. Ultimately, what actually closes a sale is emotional resonance. It's not logistical details. Prospects don't really care that much about the logistics. They often just care about how that pitch makes them feel in terms of clarity and confidence and trust that you're actually going to get them the result that they came on the call looking for. So now it comes on to the specifics around your offer. Obviously, it massively depends on what offer you're on with how you pitch. I'm going to, through this video, try and give you an overall summary of something that I believe could fit pretty much every single offer without going into too many details. I'm going to try and give you like a broad spectrum of what should pretty much always be included. So the first thing is, I would not have a long presentation like a slideshow that you click through. I think it's outdated. I think that it removes that emotional connection between you and the prospect, because then all of a sudden it's gone from a real conversation, a powerful conversation, a conversation that has felt like the prospect needs to make a change to, oh, and check out my pre-recorded presentation. It sort of doesn't really align. So from that, with pitches, I like to make them as personal as possible. I want every single prospect to feel as though this was made for them. And we are directly attributing the benefits of the service or the product to what the prospect has told us earlier in the call, which I'm going to go through in more detail. But that's an overall theme to keep the pitch personal. If whichever way you look at your pitch, it feels generic, strip it back and try to make it as personal as possible. What I like to do for my offer is I have literally a Google Doc and it just contains 2 pages. And what that allows is everything I'm explaining, because maybe my pitch lasts for 10 minutes, say, for argument's sake. At least the prospect has something to look at and follow along. Otherwise, it can be a little bit too much words and they can't grab onto everything and they can't remember everything. If they got something to look at, it doesn't need to be in depth. It's literally bullet points on my end. But it's well presented. I've put the branding onto the piece of paper, the right font, a banner with some images. It's simple, but it allows the information that I'm sharing with the prospect to actually land better. I also like to keep a link handy to one side, usually on a separate tab, to maybe run through a couple of testimonials if asked. Or if you're on Trustpilot, having that link handy is always going to be useful, just to flick through them all and be like, look how many amazing reviews and results we've got. Now, in terms of when I share the price of the service, I like to do it directly after the discovery or around halfway through the pitch. I don't really like to wait all the way until the end, because sometimes it feels as though you have to restart the pitch again, because once you actually tell someone the price, often that fight or flight response comes in and they forget everything you've said anyway. And they'll just ask a load of questions that you've already answered. When if you stack the price at the beginning or in the middle, it's almost like you're explaining why something is that price as well. So it builds value into the price rather than the price coming at the end and you having to re-explain it. Okay, now on to the first framework of the video, the made for me principle. As I mentioned earlier, pitching must feel personalized. It has to feel as though this pitch was made specifically for the prospect's desired outcome, the problems that they're facing, the pain that they're going through, the urgency that they're feeling, it should be reverted back to through the pitch. There's so many different ways how you can do this, but as simple as, when you mentioned earlier you were struggling with X, Y, and Z, you're not going to have to struggle with that anymore because X, Y, Z solution. It's as simple as that. Just reverting back to what the prospect said and including it with whatever statement you're going to say next makes it feel way more personalized. So ultimately, you're going to be using the insights that you've gained through the discovery to preface any statements that you're going to be making. We want to try and mirror the emotional language that the prospects use through the discovery. So maybe someone has said that they've been struggling for a long time now. It's like, when you mentioned you've been struggling for a while with that particular issue, well, we actually solve that this way by doing this, this, and this. We want to try to avoid these long generic statements or listing off all these features that no one actually gives a shit about. Take an honest view of your pitch deck, and think, does anyone actually give a shit about that? What do my prospects really care about? When they come onto the call and I'm having a conversation with them, what are the main things that they want? Let's just pitch that. What are the main things that everyone struggles with? Let's include that and let's solve all of those problems. It's pretty easy. It's like, what are the 5 main things that all of my customers struggle with? Okay, let's include that in the pitch. And what is the top 3 desired outcome that most prospects want? That's your pitch. Done. Just focus on the big movers. People don't need to know the award that you won last week. People don't need to know how quick your yada 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 is, right? You just don't need to go into the specifics. Obviously, prospects need to feel safe. They need you to feel like you're capable and you have the infrastructure in place, but that could be done in under a minute. And that brings me on to framework 2, which is the big idea headline. And this loops back into what we've gone through already. I like to start the pitch with a real outcome-driven, emotionally charged promise to tie in the end result. Prospects are here because of the end result, that's all. So there's many different ways we can do that. And we could just say something along the lines of, how this works is we're looking to take you from X to Y in the next 90 days by equipping you with X, Y, and Z skill set. Simple. There doesn't need to be any technical details here whatsoever. This is purely based on the transformation. What we're aiming to do with this is to evoke a response from the prospect that they are going to be that person in the next 60 days, 30 days, 90 days. And we want to deliver it with absolute certainty. That's what makes a big difference in a pitch. Your tonality. How certain are you delivering it? Or are you reading it like you're reading a shopping list? You need to be delivering your pitch like you're the most certain motherfucker that you can get this prospect the result they actually want. We also need to be delivering it with absolute clarity as well. Let's not be jumbling over our words. Our pitch is when we step into the version of us that is the absolute expert in our field, and we need to be instilling that confidence into our prospect. We need to connect through this statement who they are right now and who they want to become, and explain how we're going to get them there in how long. It's as simple as that. That's how we want to begin every pitch. Now on to the third framework, which is transformation mapping. Now, depending on your offer, you'll structure this in different ways. This is essentially just chunking down your service into memorable steps. And these steps should ultimately lead to the desired outcome that the prospect's looking for. So we just want to break the offer down into 2, 3, 4 steps. And it's like step 1, you're going to be going through the training. You're going to learn X, Y, Z. The way that we're going to deliver this is through X, Y, Z. There's 100 hours of videos and we hold your hand every single step of the way. Step 2 is the coaching. You're going to have a direct coach who's going to be holding your hand through this entire process. You're going to be working one-on-one with him, and he's going to ensure that you actually get that result. And all that training, you can actually apply it in real world. And when you mentioned earlier that you'd really been struggling with setting up that particular thing, whatever they said, well, he's going to help you with that directly. He's going to do all of that for you, literally just take that away from you. but also show you how you can do it yourself so you can have a repeatable process that you can stick to. This is just off the top of the dome, but this is what it sounds like. And then from there, it's like the third step is accountability. The way that we do that is da-da-da. Remember when you said earlier you need this? Well, this is how we solve this. And finally, the fourth step is actually da-da-da. Simple. But again, ideally, we want to try and tie each step into a pain or a desire that they mentioned earlier in the discovery, and try to use the actual language that they used. But this is all about showing the process to take them from where they are right now to actually getting the result that they want in the time frame that they want. Ideally, in this section, we're focusing on change. How do we actually facilitate that transformation and that change that they're looking for? Now, the fourth, which is where a lot of people get lost. This is where a lot of people make a load of mistakes. So this is the logic layer. Most people, the whole pitch is logic, and that doesn't really do it for prospects. Ideally, it's about showing them the change, showing them the transformation, getting them to paint that ideal scenario in their mind. And then the logic just backs it up. The logic is just that final padlock, the final bit of security that allows everything to fall into place. But the pitch is ultimately built on emotion, and then it's secured with this logical layer. So this is where we're just going to introduce the structure and the certainty. So the prospect believes, actually, I can 100% trust these guys. They've got it all figured out. This is where we're explaining things like onboarding. How in-depth is the onboarding process? Also, support is massive here. People love having support, no matter what service it is. What sort of support are you offering them in terms of customer service? How quick are you going to respond to them? Who are they going to be dealing with? How often are they going to be dealing with them? But also timelines, strict timelines of when things start, when things end, and then ultimately the delivery of your service and what that looks like and how efficient is it. This is where you make the actual service delivery bulletproof with no drama. A great way you can do this is to transcribe all your calls or listen to your calls back and try to figure out what are the most common questions and objections and where do they come from. And it's this logical layer where we can explain them away. So for instance, a lot of people might be asking at the end, what time are all the sessions? Just include that in your pitch. So then you don't have to answer an additional question at the end. Or there might be some deeper concerns where people are saying that they're not really that confident. Well, that might be a sign that you might need to double down on the support aspect of the program so people actually get that feeling of confidence. And finally, once you've done that, this is where you actually start to tie them down into a decision. I always focus on the prospect making a decision. Forget about the investment for now. Even if they bring it up, let's focus on the decision and the decision to actually make a change or make a commitment, because that's the powerful part. Actually committing to that change. Money's the easy part. So we ask a question after we finished our pitch, something along the lines of, do you actually feel like this can get you to XYZ desired outcome? 9 times out of 10, they'll say yeah. But listen out for yeah versus yeah. They're two very different things. If someone goes yeah, it's like, okay, why do you feel like it can? Let them sell themselves back and verbalize why they believe it can get them to their desired outcome. If someone says, yeah, address it head on. I sense a bit of hesitation there. Where's that coming from? Because guess what? That's not going away. If you sweep that under the rug and don't address it, it's not just going to disappear. It's going to come up later as an objection. So we might as well deal with it now. And once we've tied them down into that decision and that belief that what we offer can get them to where they want to go, the rest is up to the close and maybe a bit of objection handling. But providing you hit all those notes, then there should be no need to objection handle. Okay, 2 bonuses within pitches, things that I like to include. The first is a story transfer. People remember stories. They remember if you tell them a story about a previous customer that you had that maybe reminds them of them. Let's discuss that. And maybe you solved a problem recently that was similar to a problem that the prospect's facing, and tell them how it went and how that person's feeling right now. The truth is more sticky in story. And when you tell a story, people feel as though they're like borrowing that transformation from someone else, and it helps them to visualize it and feel it. The second bonus is engagement questions. We also don't want our pitch to just be us speaking into the void for 10-15 minutes. We need to be keeping the prospect engaged through a variety of different questions. I'm sure you can research thousands, but it's pretty straightforward. Say you've just finished speaking for a minute. It's like, how does that sound in terms of what you're looking for? It's like, yeah, sounds great. What areas specifically stand out to you? Oh, okay, great. So, you mentioned earlier, well, and we're straight back into the pitch, but it feels more like a conversation rather than just us unloading this pre-rehearsed, scripted bullshit script. And these act as well as not just keeping engagement, it also keeps attention. So after we mention maybe a feature, a service that we offer, just asking something as simple as, would you see that helping you? And this is going to keep the prospect engaged. If they're more engaged, it means they're absorbing more information, and ultimately they're going to be more likely to close. Listen, a great pitch is almost never about the product. It's never about how many modules you have, how many coaching calls you have a week, or how advanced your techniques are. A great pitch, quite simply, is allowing the prospect to feel as though the problems are actually going to go away and that they're going to reach the desired outcome that they're looking for, and that you actually understand what they're going through. Because most people enter sales calls because they're in a state of uncertainty. They feel a bit lost with a particular problem. They might feel a little bit lost in terms of where they want to go, and they want help. And if you can be that absolutely certain individual that knows you can help the prospect and build trust and have that contagious certainty where you're that certain, they then feel certain in you and they trust you. And if they trust you, they'll buy. A great pitch is soaked in certainty and authority. And as you'll know by now, you nail that through your tone and your pacing. You've literally got to be the most certain authority figure on the damn planet. That what you offer will get the prospect where they want to go. People need a leader, and you can be that leader on a sales call. That is why elite closers close at such high rates. They don't rely on slick lines and lists of features or memorized scripts. They rely on emotional precision and repeating back to the prospect the exact words that they want to hear. But you get that through listening. You get that through having a killer discovery process. You get that through having a full understanding of your service and your offering and just delivering on a plate essentially exactly what the prospect's looking for and building trust within it. That is what speaks to the human experience. And in my opinion, that's what delivers a perfect pitch. All right, welcome to what might be the most important sales training that you'll ever watch. This is a full masterclass on objection handling. It's not surface level at all. There's a lot of online programs out there that potentially you pay tens of thousands of dollars for just to get access to this stuff. This is not scripts that you're going to memorize. This is the deep work, the psychology, the patterns, the frameworks. This ultimately what separates closers that are stuck at 3K a month to the closers that are doing 20, 30K a month. I've closed 200 million in high ticket sales. I've trained hundreds of closers in this exact methodology. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, the way that most sales coaches and most people who are in sales handle objections is completely wrong. So here's what we're going to be covering over the next hour. The things to avoid when it comes to objection handling, the 4 different types of objections, my exact framework that I use. Like I used to charge thousands of dollars just to give this system to people. Deep dives into common objections, how to handle it, how to handle things like I need to think about it, the language patterns you need to look out for, the mindset behind it, quite literally everything you could possibly need. This is not a quick tip video. This is not something that you need to scroll through and try to pick certain things. It's essentially everything that I know when it comes to objections. So if you're serious about becoming a master of objection handling, then at least take some notes, pull up a Word document, get a pen and paper, because this is going to be literally everything that you need. Look how detailed this shit is. We're going to be going through all of this in this video. So let's start all the way over here, because the best place to start is the foundations, right? So before we get into how to actually handle objections, we need to talk about why the way that you might be doing it right now might not be working as well as you'd like it to be, because most sales training teaches you to memorize like these quick lines. When someone says this, you say this. When they say that, you say that. And it makes sense, right? You want to be prepared. You want to have answers ready. But real conversations don't flow like that. When someone says, I need to think about it, they're not reading from a script internally. They're feeling something. But if you don't handle that the right way and you're just thinking, oh, I'll just use this script for this section. They can tell, usually, to begin with. Like, how many times have you heard sales coaches say things like, oh, is that the symptom of the cause? If something's expensive, is that the symptom of the cause though? It's like, all people have to do is spend a bit of time on social media now, and they probably see every single high ticket closer do that same objection handling remark. And that's going to actually do the opposite effect, because they just know you're trying to handle their objections. You're going to lose rapport with them. It feels robotic, not authentic, like you're not actually listening, which you're not. You're just waiting for your turn to talk. I used to do this as well, so it's not just you. I'd be on a call and I'd have like a list of different objections. So when I'd get into the objection part of the call, I'd have like tabs. I need to think about it, partner. I need 24 hours, and I click on it, and it works sometimes. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying there's better ways to do it. And often the difference between like a 10K a month closer and a 20K a month closer and a 30K, it's small details like this. This is what actually makes a difference, because it allows you to close more people, those higher level prospects that a scripted line isn't going to work on, and they're going to go, no, I just want to think about it. And you're going to try some quick line with them, and they're going to go, yeah, I'm still going to think about it. And you're like, I could have got that person. That's where this comes into play. It's that extra 10 or 20% close rate that makes the big difference. Because if you're not addressing what's actually going on in the head and just reciting lines, then it's not going to go super smooth. The big shift for me happened when I stopped trying to like handle objections and started trying to understand them. See, objections aren't people saying no. They're like clues. It's basically prospect telling you what's holding them back, but you need to know how to listen. So in this masterclass, I'm not going to give you scripts. I'm giving you something better, like an internal framework for you to understand what's really behind every objection and how to guide people past their own limitations. This is what separates great closers from good ones. And by the end of this video, if you apply everything that we've gone through, you will be better at handling objections than 99.9% of salespeople out there. So let's look at the psychology behind objections here. The truth is, most objections aren't real. I know that sounds weird, but stick with me. When someone says, I need to think about it, they're not actually saying they need more time to process information. When they're saying it's too expensive, they're not always saying they can't afford it. They could be saying a multitude of other things. They might be saying, I feel uncomfortable right now. I feel scared. I don't feel safe making this decision. But here's why this matters. If you try to deal with that surface level objection, you'll lose the deal. Humans ultimately make decisions emotionally, then justify them logically. This isn't new information. Every sales trainer probably tells you this, but most people don't actually understand what that means in practice. It means someone gives you a logical objection like, I don't have the money, I don't have time, I need to speak to my partner. They're not giving you the real reason to begin with, okay? The real reason is always emotional. Objections are windows into internal conflict. Often if people are on like high ticket sales calls, they're usually bought into whatever you're selling, like to an extent. They've sat with you over an hour, they've gone through a sales call, they've probably gone through a load of things before they got on the call, but then it's come to the price and these limitations start creeping in. So this is just an illustration of essentially what that process looks like. Through our discovery section, we're going to know where they are. We're going to know where they want to be. We're going to know what the gap is holding them back. So when we get into objections, you're not here to overcome them. You're here to help resolve the internal conflict by shifting the belief that created the objection. You are the guide. So your job isn't to convince them. It's to help them see what's really holding them back. And once they see it, once they articulate it, you can give them a different lens to look through it, and you can allow them to move past it. And often it looks like this. You've got the surface objection, which is what they say. Now this is where most closers trip up. They just try and handle the surface objection and it goes bad. Like sometimes you'll capture people with some quick lines, but ideally you need to be asking the right questions to understand, okay, what's the actual concern here? Let's get that. But then there is a layer below that. It's the underlying belief behind their concern. And if we handle that, we're in an even stronger position. And then a layer below that is who they believe they are. if we can handle that aspect of it, that's where you can really crush objections. So there's essentially 4 layers of objections. And the first layer is the smokescreen, or what I like to call the bullshit filter. This is usually the reflective, protective responses. Again, we don't handle smokescreens. We don't handle bullshit filters. This thing's like, can you send me the info over email? I'll get back to you tomorrow. I need to think about it. That's not the truth, right? Why is my GIFs not playing? Haha, there we go. Then we get onto the logical wrapper. This is where the rational sounding reasons come into play. And often this is just logic as armor for what's really going on. But this is where we'll start to get some distinction between what this potential objection is. Is it like fear-based or is it logistical-based? So we need to, this is where we're asking better questions. I'm going to show you exactly how to do this, but before I show you how to do it, I need you to understand it. So the logical wrapper often is people saying things like, when they have a money objection, worrying that if they spend money on this and it doesn't work, they feel irresponsible. They believe that resources are scarce and they must protect the money. They might feel like they're not able to manage this on top of everything else. They may feel like they need permission from a partner. So your role in this section is to isolate ultimately whether it's logical, whether it's fear-based, and get to it. We need to get to the root. And if it's not logistical, because we deal with logistical objections different, often it's fear. And that's basically the emotional truth behind the objection. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of change. Your role here is to essentially position that fear. You need to drag it out of the hat. Like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat, you need to get it up and look at it. Look it in the eye. Because that's not them. But let's view it as a separate entity and view it as something that's happening to them. And then let them choose. Let them choose if they want to continue listening to fear, because it's ultimately what will hold them back. And the layer below fear is the identity foundation. This is the core beliefs of who they believe they are. Our identity is our deepest operating system. So this is things like people who believe they don't make decisions like this. They believe this is too much money for them and what they've spent for the rest of their life, because they don't identify with being that sort of person. So our job in this section is to help them see that the decision they're avoiding is actually the decision that their future self, the identity that they want, would make right now. If they were already earning 100k a month, then a 5k investment isn't a lot if it gets them further along. So it's allowing them to step into it. So this is a good way to look at identity, and it's a good way to also improve the way that you make decisions. Most people think that it goes like this. When I have the resources, I'll do the thing and that will make me successful. But in reality, it works backwards, and this isn't common knowledge. This is something that I've discovered way later in my entrepreneurial journey. You, to begin with, have to be the person, do what that person would do, essentially before you are that person, and that's what brings the result. It's like you've got to do it backwards, because if you do it the normal way, like when you have the resources, you'll do the thing, you'll be successful. You'll never have the resources because you never do the thing, so you'll never be successful, so you'll never have the resources. And it's just this cyclical nature. You've got to do it in reverse. Like, example, most people believe when they have the spare money, they'll invest into sales coaching, and that'll make them better at sales, and that'll lead to consistent 20k months. But the fact is, to get to 20k months, you have to act like you're that person already, be resourceful enough to find the capital to invest in the coaching, and that allows you to become that person. Your role in objection handling is helping them to be the decision maker before they have all the answers. So there are 4 kinds of objections, and let's break them down. The first is smokescreens. These, like I mentioned earlier, are reflective exits disguised as reasons. But how can you spot them? This is important. They're vague, they're flimsy, there's no reason given. They just want to leave the decision. So examples there for you. How do we handle this? How do we handle a smokescreen? We need to pierce through it immediately. We need to create safety, normalize, and ultimately dig for what's real. The second kind of objection is logistical objections. These are real world constraints. Okay, I'll give you an example. Someone really wants to buy whatever you're selling and they don't have the card, and they literally don't have it. How are you going to sell to them? But there is ways how we can deal with that logically to still get the sale, still get some form of commitment, right? We deal with logic, but these are usually very specific. The prospect delivers them calmly. They usually say, no, I really want to go ahead with this. It's just X, Y, Z. I'm traveling for 3 weeks. I'm in 2 other programs. I've left my card at home. I'm transferring it from my savings. These are all real logistical objections. How we handle them is acknowledging that that's the reality, and then we need to test their commitment through various questioning, which again I'm going to show you later in the masterclass, but we want to test it by saying things like, if XYZ wasn't a factor, just so I'm clear, are we like 100% in on this? Yes, cool. Then thirdly, explore creative solutions. How can we, if someone doesn't have the card right now, do they have Apple Pay? If someone needs to transfer from the savings, can we get a deposit from whatever's in the current account right now, even if it's $50? These are the creative solutions, how we can actually get some commitment, some decision, but leave the logistical stuff until later. The third type of objection is fear-based. So often these are disguised as logistical objections, but they're not. How do we spot them? Hesitation in voice, emotional language. It's usually about themselves, not the offer. It's usually vague, or they change reasons multiple times. They might say, I've tried before. These things don't work for me. What if I invest in it, doesn't work? I'm a bit worried. These sort of things. How do we handle it? Normalize the fear. Separate them from the fear. Make fear the villain in the room. Reframe the belief. Help them be the guide, and then empower them. This is the difference between closing someone and overcoming objections and helping someone make a decision that they feel happy to make. It's the empowerment. And then fourth is hybrid. This is objections with both logistical and fear-based components. So sometimes money can be logistical and fear at the same time, so can partner, so can timing. But how we handle it is by isolating the two of them, handling them separately. So like, for instance, if it was like a money objection, we could use a phrase like that. Is it that you literally can't afford it right now? Or is it more that you're just a bit unsure if you should? We need to address the root. So they're the 4 different kinds of objections. I hope you've taken a note of those, because these are going to be really important as we go through. Okay, now we're going to look my framework. This is what I have previously charged thousands of dollars to teach sales teams, implement on offers, train salespeople, and I'm literally giving it away for free because I want to help as many people get started in this. This is the CARE framework. It's the exact process that I've used to close millions in high ticket sales. It works for any objection, any industry, any offer. And here's how it breaks down. C stands for clarify. A stands for ask and isolate. R stands for reframe. E stands for empower with action. So let me walk you through each step in detail. And as we go through, I'm going to give you real examples, language patterns and frameworks that you can literally start using today. Okay, let's look at C, clarify. So the purpose of this aspect is to lower the threat response and try to start discovering what's real. The purpose behind this is to get people to feel safe, because when you start asking people for 5K, 10K, 20K, their fear response goes super high. And we want to get them out of that survival brain and into their rational thinking brain, back into the emotion. Because if you don't, you're just going to keep getting smoke screens. They're going to keep saying, I just want to think about it. I just want to think about it. We need to lower that guard here. We need to disarm them completely. There's a few things we do in the clarifying section, but mainly the clarify stands for clarifying their belief in the solution. So we want them to, number one, the most important thing, do they believe what we've gone through over the past hour will actually get them to the outcome that they want? If the answer is yes, we are onto something. Because if they say yeah, that means they believe it's real. They believe we can help them, but there's something holding them back. This is what we're going to figure out. But the most important question here is when they have said, yes, I do believe it can help me, we want to ask why. Why do you feel like this can help you? Because this will get them out of that survival brain and get them back into rational thinking. So we want to remove the sales pressure here as well, as much as possible. We want to step into that trusted advisor frame. I want you to think in objections, you're like a big brother or a big sister, helping someone to make a difficult decision. Investing in yourself is not easy, especially if it's the first time. We're going to normalize the objection in this section as well. Like, yeah, that's not uncommon. Most of our clients feel that exact way before joining our program. We need to create permission to be straight up with them, because in order for us to help them, can we be honest? Can we have an honest discussion? And that is clarify. So throughout that section, hopefully we're going to gain a lowered guard. We're going to get them back into the rational brain, get them out of survival mode, get them to confirm they believe in the solution and explain the reasons why they believe in the solution. We want all of those things before we move on to the next stage, which is going to be ask and isolate. This is where we're going to ask various different questions to ultimately get to the root of the objection. Because in the previous one, we've often only got the surface layer to begin with. Whether they've said it's too expensive, whether they said I need to think about it, whether they said I need to speak to my partner, doesn't matter. We're still going to keep going to the root. Most people don't even understand what the real objection is. They're just giving you whatever their mind is clinging onto, because they've usually, like 80% of the time, fear response, right? They're just like, oh, fuck, need to think about it. Yeah, need 24 hours, a lot of money, shut down. Your job is to help them discover what it potentially is holding them back. And again, be that guide. So there's different isolation techniques we can use. Just quite simply asking why is that? What's beneath that? If we solve that problem, would that mean that we'd be going ahead? Like, for example, a chain here is like, I just need to think about it. It's like, well, what do you feel like you need to actually go over, just so I can see if I can help? They reply, just to see if it's the right time. Our response would be, what makes you feel like it might not be? Boom, the objection's going to come out. This is the sort of questioning that we're going to go down. I'm going to give you lots of examples on this later, but I need you to understand why you're doing things before just going and doing them, because that's probably most people's issues already, because they're just reading a script. They don't even know why they're doing certain things. This is also the section where we start to figure out whether it's logistical or emotional, because we're going to handle them different, right? We're going to handle them completely different. Ultimately, your job in this section is to get them to ask questions that force them to articulate what's really going on. And once they say it out loud, then you can address it. But if you do not isolate the real objection, you're just going to be swinging your hands around like you're trying to fight a ghost. You're going to be solving the wrong problem. We need to figure out exactly what it is. Is it logistical? Is it emotional? Because it's only then we can move on to the next stage, which is reframe. This is the most powerful part of the framework. This is where you help people to see their situation differently, their beliefs differently, their identity different. This is where deals close. But here's the principle. You're not trying to convince them. You're helping them see what's actually true. I'm going to give you the different reframe principles. I'm going to give you a lot of examples down here, but let me explain why to begin with. We're not going to be providing new information here. We're going to be providing them a new lens through which to say the same situation. Reframes work because we may expose limiting beliefs as optional. Do they really need this fear in their life? Like, what happens if they continue holding on to this fear? Are they going to progress any further than where they are right now? What is fear bringing up these limiting beliefs and saying, over the past year, while XYZ limiting belief has been holding you back from achieving XYZ outcome, what do you feel like you've potentially left on the table? And getting them to look at things through a different lens, creating cognitive dissonance with their current pattern of behavior and offering an alternative interpretation that ultimately serves them better. Now, I'm going to show you the different ways to reframe, but before we do that, I'm going to show you the final step. And this is powerful here, because we want people when they're buying to be in an empowered, excited state. We want them to embody the version of themselves that's capable of deciding. Ultimately, this decision making is an identity act. When someone makes a big decision, they're not just choosing action, they're choosing what sort of person they want to be. We're helping them step into the decision. We're not pushing them. You're calling them forward into the version of themselves that's capable of deciding. And I'm going to give you a really big key here, really big. You want to tie them into the decision, not the investment. Obviously, the investment is an element of it, but when we're tying them into this empowerment stage, we're not talking about the investment. We're going to talking about the decision to move forwards, the decision to unlock the skills that are going to lead to their XYZ outcome desire. It's not about the money. It's ultimately about them choosing their future from this point on. Using back their language, using back their reasons that they have brought up early in the call, their words, and inviting them to step into the identity that ultimately makes this decision. So let's take a step back and let's look at the different ways how we can reframe objections. This is some key reframes. Now, these are not scripts. These are actual psychological constructs of essentially changing the way someone looks at something. These are not scripts. These are not word tracks. I'm giving you real psychological frameworks that actually change people's decisions. The first is aspirational identity framing. So when are we going to use this? This is when we can see that a prospect is making a decision from where they are right now instead of where they want to be, instead of the version of themselves who they've told us throughout the call they want to become, but they're still making a decision based around who they are right now. So we're going to show them the contrast between who they are right now and who they need to become, and bring that to light. An example of doing this would be saying something like, which version of you is ultimately making this decision? The one that's been stuck for the past 5 years, or the one that's actually living the life that you've described? We are ultimately challenging who they are here. And it's very hard to move forward in life if you always make the decision based on the person you are right now. You need to make decisions based around the person you want to become. And this is a belief you should hold as a closer. This comes down to congruence and acting like the person you are advising people to become. It's a hell of a lot easier if you are also that person. And we're going to challenge them from a state of believing where they are the current patterns and behaviors to I can actually choose who I become through making the right decisions. Second way of handling and reframing objections is fear exposure. This is where we're going to separate fear from them and make it the villain in the room. We're not attacking them. We're not saying you're scared. We're saying this is fear. Hello, Mr. Fear. Let's handle this together, because that motherfucker right there is holding you back from your dreams. So you're going to keep letting it? Separate it. People believe that fear is protecting them, but we're actually showing them that the fear is holding them back from the version they want to become. Different ways we can do this. Just understand it and then let the handling come out of you naturally. That's how the best people at handling objections handle them. Not with fancy word tracks, with real understanding. And just handle objections by speaking, ultimately, like words that are theirs, not scripted. And you'll know which one to apply to which people. The third is agency reclaiming. This is to be used when people are outsourcing their decision or hiding behind delays, time objections. Ultimately, ownership is power. When they defer decisions to partners, when they defer decision to time, saying they don't have time, they're ultimately saying they don't trust themselves. So we want to basically push the belief onto them that they can make big decisions and they need to trust themselves. We're essentially challenging them from a place of where they believe they need external validation to make decisions, and installing a new belief, which is you are capable, you are empowered, you can do this on your own, you do not need permission. The fourth is a belief collapse. Now, we're going to use this when they have a fixed belief around themselves that's ultimately limiting them. Beliefs aren't facts. The stories that we've repeated and repeated and repeated until they feel true. So we're helping them see that it's optional. An example of this is people who say, I always take 24 hours to think about a decision, right? That's a belief. Why do you do that? What's the belief behind that? That more time equals a better decision. But is that actually true? Has that actually served you, that belief, throughout your life? Because we are a construct of our decisions, right? So if we're a construct of our decisions, are you exactly where you want to be? No. So maybe you might need to change the way you make decisions, because if you want to get to a different place, you might need to change the way you approach decisions. Is a quick example off the top of the dome. That's a belief collapse. The fourth is stagnation cost reframe, or cost of inaction, or consequence reframe. This is when they are focused so much on the risk of action versus the risk of inaction, which is far greater, as we know. By not making a decision, you are making a decision to stay where you are. That's another belief that you need to essentially own and have as a closer. You need to be the sort of person that takes massive action, because how do you expect to help people, guide them through decisions, if you don't do this stuff yourself? And understanding and putting the belief into the prospect and asking things like, what's the price of doing nothing? What is that worth to you? If we speak in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and you're in the same place as now, how does that sit with you? Etc., etc., etc. A sixth way to handle objections is using mirror framing. After we've had a really strong discovery process, and we've pulled out the limiting belief, we've pulled out the desire, we've pulled out what's holding them back, the pain of the current situation, everything, we've smashed it, okay? And then they say they need to think about it. It's like, huh? What? Ultimately, they're contradicting themselves and what they said earlier in the conversation. And we want to repeat back their own words to them to essentially create cognitive dissonance. Earlier, you mentioned X, Y, Z. Help me to understand why you're now hesitating if you believe that this can get you to where you want to go. Remember, if we've clarified their belief in the solution, let's say someone's been stuck for a year, they're not earning the money they'd like, they know they're holding themselves back by not taking action, X, Y, Z. Very common info products, customer profile. We get to the price, we tell them it's $5,000. They say they need to think about it. We say, before you go, do you actually believe this can get you to where I want to go? We're clarifying back 2 stages. Yes, I do. Why? Because of da-da-da-da-da. Okay, fine. Isolate the objection, and then we would use a mirror frame there. Like earlier you mentioned that you've been stuck for a year and the reason that you aren't where you want to be is because your lack of action. Help me to understand why things have changed like in the past half an hour since going through this. That's an example. And finally, an option is resource to resourcefulness. This is when people are so focused on what they have instead of what they can create. We need to shift people from a scarcity mindset where they feel as though resources are limited to an abundance mindset where resources are unlimited, which is true. Again, another belief that you have to have as a closer. You need to act this way, as if you can pull resources out of thin air. Because guess what? The richest people in the world all believe that, and they are the ones who can do that. Because you are your beliefs, essentially. Your life is a reflection of your beliefs. You need to, as a closer, not be in a scarcity mindset. You need to be in an abundance mindset. And we need to move a prospect from that. Through a great way to do this is through story, which I'll give you some great examples of how to do that. But we can show them that if they stay focused on what they have in their hand for the rest of their life, they're going to stay stuck. Okay, so now let's take a bit of a deep dive into my objection belief matrix. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when these objections essentially are real. So we're going to look at the objection to begin with, then the surface meaning, then the actual meaning, then the underlying beliefs, then the identity behind it, any distinctions we have to make, and what we need to address. This is essentially like a guide of how to handle every single flipping objection that has ever existed. So let's say I need to think about it. Probably the most common objection you'll ever get in high ticket sales. What is the surface meaning here that they need time to process? That's not the real meaning though. Often it's I'm scared and I need an escape route. I'm going to tell you something right now. People who say I need to think about it, if you had 100 calls and 100 people said I need to think about it, 2 of them would get back to you. And for whatever reason, closers keep letting people off the hook. As a sales manager, as a sales agency owner, as a sales trainer, I would prefer you to burn that lead and keep digging and keep guiding the prospect to a decision you know is good for them, bringing out the fear, challenging them and helping them rather than just letting them get back to you. Because you're doing your clients a disservice and you're doing yourself a disservice because they won't get back to you. Squeeze every last drop out of the lemon. The beliefs behind that is that careful deliberation equals a smart decision, or if they delay and that they need to protect themselves from a mistake. The identity behind that is that I'm someone who thinks things through carefully. I'm someone who needs certainty before acting. But as we know, you can never get certainty on anything without doing it. So how do we address it? We address it by giving them different ways to look at these beliefs and identity. There's thousands of ways how we can do that. But just as an example, is this real strategic thinking or is this fear avoidance? Has this pattern, such as careful deliberation equals smart decisions, does it actually serve them? The identity, if they are someone who thinks things through carefully, has that actually served them, thinking everything through carefully? If they think about it, are they exactly where they want to be due to the decision-making process? Often the answer will be no. Or which version of them delays versus takes action? The one they want to be or the one that stays stuck? Let's separate the identities. Again, there is thousands of different ways you can verbalize, challenge. Is verbalize a word? I don't know. There is thousands of ways you can put into words challenging these beliefs and this identity. The second one, as an example, it's too expensive or I can't afford it. Surface meaning could mean I don't have the money or I don't see the value, right? What's the actual meanings, potential actual meanings behind it? I don't believe I'm worth this investment. I'm scared to commit. I'm scared to commit resources to something that might not work, or I don't trust myself to make this work. Underlying beliefs behind that meaning is money is scarce and must be protected. Spending this makes me irresponsible if it fails. Fear of failure. Some people may believe they don't deserve to invest in this level. That crosses over into identity. And that resources come from having them in your hand, not creating them. Identity behind it. I'm not someone who affords these sort of things, or I'm not the kind of person that makes big investments on the spot. Now, there's a critical distinction here between essentially having the money and being scared, or literally not having the money. This is when we come back to what I said earlier, where we are separating fear-based objections and logistical-based objections. So if they can't afford, they literally don't have access to the funds. That's logistical. There's creative ways and how we can help them, right? Which we went through earlier. But if they won't afford and they have it, then it's actually not a money objection at all. It's going to be a fear-based objection. So how do we address it? To begin with, do they literally not have it, or are they looking for more certainty before they allocate it? Are they thinking resource-based or resourcefulness-based? Like, what's the identity of someone who makes investments like this? And is that the sort of person they want to become? So this is how I structure in objections and actually understanding them by breaking it down. I've got pretty much every single objection you could think of on here. I'm not going to go through them all like this because I've got other ways of showing you, but this is how I so I have full understanding of every objection and why it looks a certain way. That's all there. You should always understand why people have certain objections, not just take them for what they've said. Now, before moving on to handling particular objections like time and money, partner, all the common ones that people struggle with, I'm going to give you a bit of source here around using objections as a secondary discovery. So you've gone through the discovery to begin with. They've got to the end of the discovery. You're thinking, I've nailed this call. This person is definitely going to go ahead. They're ready to make a decision. They're ready to make a change. You've absolutely smashed it out of the park. Then you go through the pitch. They're starting to think, oh God, there's a payment coming now. You've told them the payment. You're expecting them to buy on the phone. Everything's gone out the window. They forgot everything you've discussed. They're stressed out of their mind. This is when we're gonna, it's also like a mindset thing for you guys as well. Instead of thinking of objections as like this process that should be over in 5 minutes and you should crush it like, I don't know, someone on TV. Let's use objection process after you've offered the price as a secondary discovery. Don't worry about like going over the same ground here. Should be keeping notes always. And this is where we're going to essentially go through what we've already gone through. And let's just like bring it back into the picture a little bit, because that emotional feeling that you got at the end of the discovery fades, and all the logical and protective instincts will start flaring up, and we want to get them out of that state. Second discovery brings that emotion back and starts to create weight in the decision. So what you're going to do here is loop back to what they've already said earlier and anchor them in their why. Why do they want this outcome? Why is it so important to them? Let's emotionalize the decision and let's future pace the outcome, time frame, the cost of delay. So some key questions to ask here to bring people back into this like second discovery state. Like, I know there's no crystal ball of certainty here, but do you believe what we've gone through can actually get you to XYZ outcome so you can XYZ important meaning to them personally? Yeah, I do. Why? Why is that? Getting them to buy into the belief to begin with. Then let's reconnect with that. How important is it for you to achieve that? What would that mean for you? Who else would that change things for? What difference would it make to your life? We're reconnecting them into that emotion, taking them out of price-based thinking now and into results-based thinking. So, let's say they're hesitating. Let's look at some of the biggest reasons why you would actually do this. Why would it change things for you if we actually did this and you succeeded? What would be the biggest reasons, do you think? And we're future pacing them here to solve the problems. And at what point does not making a decision here stop you from achieving X, Y, Z? And then time frame based questions, like at what point does this just become like a conversation that you've had a nice hour out of both our days and you go away feeling probably disappointed that you haven't gone ahead, to me actually helping you get the result that you want. Like, not just another nice conversation where nothing changes. When do you feel like you're ready to do that? That's an example of how we would conduct a second discovery. Instead of rushing and going for the close, going for the jugular, we're going to loop back around to the things that are actually important to them and get them to feel it. Now, let's look at how to handle some of the most common objections. And I'm going to pace through this. I'm going to go through it quick. So let's get a pen and paper out and work with me here. So, time objections. This is an identity armor. They believe they are a careful decision maker. They believe this rule makes them smart, but it's actually a pattern that's keeping them stuck. The belief is that time, being careful around decisions, equals intelligence, and it doesn't. The most successful people on the planet are masters at making quick decisions when an opportunity arises. That's why they are in the position they are in. That's why people like Elon Musk is where he is, because he is an elite decision maker. He can make good quality decisions based on information that's presented to him like that. They believe this rule has protected them before. They believe that if they wait, the fear will disappear. They believe if they wait, that it makes them more responsible. They believe that if they wait, they'll have more clarity. They'll have more certainty. These things are not true. So how do we interrupt that? Like, if they have one of these beliefs and they feel like it's a big commitment and taking 24 hours has helped them, well, it's still going to be a big commitment in 24 hours. What's going to change in 24 hours? You're still going to have the same amount of information you have right now. We're going to take the pressure off. Like, I can give you the next year if you want, but what's that actually going to give you? And how do you know these rules and these beliefs that you have in your mind aren't the thing that have kept you stuck? Because we're ultimately a construct of our beliefs. And if you believe these things, then often that is the reason why you are where you are, good or bad. And then identity frame we can use here. Which perspective are you using here? Which lens are you looking at this decision from? The one that's gotten you to where you are right now, or the one that's going to get you to where you want to go? What version of you puts yourself in a better position? The one who delays for another week or another month or another year, or the one who realizes you've been delaying for long enough and this is the time when you make a decision? This is not a quick decision. This is something you've already been deciding. You've already been having this conversation. You've already been doing research before this call. This call is just where you make the decision to actually unlock the life that you want. So we're going to use their words against them. So, for instance, if they've mentioned they have been stuck for X amount of time, so you'd say, earlier you mentioned you've been stuck for X amount of time. How much time are you willing to keep being stuck before you actually step up and solve this? Now, let's look at how this objection would go. A prospect might say, I need 24 hours to think about it. It's always how I make big decisions. We would say, can I ask though, what's going to change in 24 hours? You're still going to have the same amount of information as you have right now. They'll say, I just need to process it. I just need to digest it. And we're going to say, when you say process it, what specifically do you need to process, just so I can see if I can help? I don't know. It's just how I do things. I hear you, but can I share a perspective? Has approaching opportunities with this decision process got you to exactly where you want to be? Not exactly, no. Okay, so would it make sense to keep using that decision-making process if you want to get to a new outcome? Simple, right? I'm going to preface this, all these objections, right? These are essentially reframes. This is after we have gone through C and A. These are reframes, right? We don't just want to dive in with these lines, because often, if we haven't clarified their belief in the solution, got them to repeat back why, and then isolated it, we might handle the wrong thing. We should always isolate the objection to begin with. Okay, now let's look at money objections. These are things like, I can't afford it, it's too expensive. Our philosophy here as a closer should be that money is an unlimited resource that can be made anywhere. The problem is not their lack of resources, but their willingness to be resourceful. These should all be your philosophies. As I mentioned, as closers, we are not like making some like trickery philosophy to get someone to buy so we get commission. These are the philosophies of successful people. This is what successful people believe. They believe money is an unlimited resource. Time is not an unlimited resource. It's very, very limited. Understanding that more time doesn't help decisions. It actually makes them worse. And the more you delay decisions, the longer you stay stuck exactly where you are. That's why most people aren't successful, because they don't take any fucking action on anything. They just think about shit forever. The reason I am where I am from nothing is because I take massive action. I failed my way to success. ultimately. I take huge action. If something presents itself as an opportunity, I start it that day. Obviously, I do research. I do a bit of due diligence. But there is only so much research and due diligence you can do with anything. All you have to do is fucking do it and find out. Fuck around and find out. Get it tattooed on you, because it's true. If you've been looking at doing high ticket sales and you're watching this video and this is the millionth high ticket sales YouTube video you've watched and you haven't invested in mentorship, you still haven't got a role, you're still in a 9 to 5, what the fuck are you doing? Take massive action, get started. If it's not with me and you think I'm an idiot, that's fine, but still take massive action, because on the other end of it, in 2 months' time, you can be massively successful, have a remote position, paying multiple 6 figures a year. But you need to take action today. Rant over. So there's some core questions we're going to ask here. If people have a money objection, is it better to just delay and do nothing until you can afford it and you've got it in your hand? Or is it better to look at potential ways how you can look at this so you can move forward? This is like a cost of inaction versus results-based thinking. Have you thought about what it could cost you by not solving this, by staying where you are? Is there a cost to you for doing that, for actually staying where you are? The pattern here is what has held us back in the past is often the same thing that holds us back in the future. So unfortunately, if you're constantly focused on the resources that you have at hand, you never have enough money to invest in your business, invest in your skills, because you're in a job which doesn't pay you very well and you don't have any skills. You will never be able to generate the funds to do those two things ever in your life, so you will stay exactly where you are. Does that make sense to everyone? Like an extreme example, if you've got a job at McDonald's, you paid minimum wage, and realistically, to set up like any decent business, you've got to invest money or you've got to invest time. But you work 5-6 days a week. You've not really got enough time to set up a business. You also have no skills. So looking at the resources that you have at hand and saying, I cannot afford this, but you also don't have the time investment available to set up a successful business, you will stay exactly where you are. You might get a better job. All right, go and get a better job. You still don't have the time. You still likely won't have the money. You'll probably just get a slightly bigger house or a slightly better car and be in the exact same position and get lifestyle inflation. You need to actually invest in yourself and take that action of the person you want to become that person. So we look at resourcefulness. Okay. When I set up my first business, I took out a ginormous loan. I did not have the money. I took out a giant loan to do it. And that enabled me, to be honest, it didn't go that well for a long while, but it enabled me to get started. It all comes down to the perspective people are willing to use. If they make decisions from the perspective that got them here, that's all they will ever see. But if they make decisions from the place they want to be, that's when you will notice a real difference. So the choice they have is it more important for you to focus on the lack of resources or your willingness to become resourceful so you can actually accomplish X, Y, Z outcome? For those of you who didn't go to high school, resources are what you have. Resourcefulness is what you can create. So a good frame here is like which version of you is in a more empowered position. The version of you that just basically sells yourself on what you can't do and lets it dictate your decision. Or the version of you that has that much certainty in themselves, is open to looking at potential ways to move this forward so you can actually achieve this goal. Another frame is showing them that there is a cost. Like there's a cost to buying this investment right now, to investing in your business. That is a cost. That's a real material cost. But there's also a cost to not solving this. There's also a cost for you staying at your job for another year. Which one feels better to you? The cost right now or the cost of staying stuck? Which is better, which is worse? And is achieving actually worth it to you and getting a little bit uncomfortable so you can be much more comfortable in future? Because a lot of people, they'll be like, oh no, that's literally all my savings. How long has it taken you to save that up? A couple of years. Is it worth for you to be uncomfortable for the next couple of months and not have that safety net for you to be 10 times more comfortable, never have to worry about savings again, but to be in that state of discomfort for a little while? Is that worth it to you? Or do you want to stay where you are because that's your choice? Again, I've given like an example here of what that looks like, which you will be able to have a look at. I will send you all this. For any of you who want this document for free, for yours to download, you can actually access this Marrow board, go through it, learn it, master it, become a master of objections. Then just DM me on Instagram the word objections, and I'll send it across to you completely for free. Okay, moving on to partner objections. So the core philosophy here that we have to own as a closer is that The position someone is in, the position you're in, the position I'm in, is a complete construct of the decisions that they made. So with partner objections, we want them to essentially change it themselves and take complete ownership of their own decisions. We need to set identities for them to fall into. Like for men, we want them to fall into like a leadership frame. We want them to feel like leaders and fucking empowered bosses, like not people who go and ask their wife for permission. We want them to fall into that leadership frame. So asking questions like, which version of you strikes you as more of a leader in this situation? The version of you that seeks that last bit of certainty from your wife for a decision that feels uncomfortable, or the version of you that becomes decisive and courageous for his family and walks in and says, I've made a decision to give you the life you deserve despite potentially your emotions getting the better of you. For females, we want to give them a frame of empowerment. Now, approach this carefully, but with confidence, but let's focus on empowering them. If you look at the life that you want and the life you want to accomplish, which version of you is more empowered? The version of you that understands fear, sometimes gets in the way and puts obstacles between you, but takes control regardless, or the version of you that allows it to take over and sabotage what we both know that you can achieve. Now, with partner objections, they can sometimes be logistical, sometimes be fear-based. Through questioning, we need to realize what they are as well. Like logistical is they share a bank account. Fear-based is, I just want to ask permission, right? Big difference. So if their objection is like, listen, it's just a respect thing, we want to be like, okay, but your partner has respected you this whole time while you haven't been able to achieve X, Y, Z outcome. Why would they all of a sudden not respect you if you were to take the steps to achieve it? Why would they not respect that decision automatically? Because they've been respecting you not making the decision and staying where you are. Do you like that? It's good. And the follow-up is ultimately, whose responsibility is it to get up at 5 a.m. and attend these meetings? The one that's going to go through all of the work, the one that's going to meet the mentor 3 times a week. Who actually holds that responsibility daily? I do. So in turn, who takes the responsibility to take the first step? I do. So that's basically like the responsibility frame that we have there. I put a more in-depth one that you can see on the screen here. But ultimately, we're allowing them to take ownership and responsibility. That is the best way to handle partner objections. Shopping around. Tricky one. One that I've been working on for a little while now to do research, see how people are dealing with it. And I've come up with one that I've seen someone do, and I think it's a great way, and it's where you flip the tables essentially. What a lot of people do when they get like, I'm shopping around, they try to compete. Who is it they're speaking to? Well, do they do this? Well, I've heard that about them, blah, 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 blah. You want to do like the complete opposite of that. We don't want to just explain all the features we can do because it's not about convincing them. That's not why they're shopping around. They're shopping around because they're deferring responsibility and they're looking for someone who can basically do more of the thing for them ultimately. We don't want to go into comparison mode. We don't want to sound desperate. We don't want to position them in power. We want them to buy the belief back into themselves. So you can flip the script and ask them, why do you feel like you're someone who could actually succeed with what we can offer? Like, why should we let you do this? They will then sell themselves. Because I'm a hard worker, because I've done this, Follow up. Because remember, we've already clarified the belief in the solution earlier at the clarify section. So if you believe you can succeed with this and you're that sort of person, what would shopping around actually give you that you don't already have here? And they'll be like, I don't know, see who can do the best for me. Well, there you are. You're allowing your future to be dependent on someone else rather than taking ownership and actually having the courage to pick an opportunity and make it work. Shopping around is ultimately an avoidance of responsibility. You're looking for someone to make this easier for you. And the truth is, your success doesn't come from finding the perfect program. It comes from your commitment to whatever you choose. We're getting them to buy in on themselves. So we're handing responsibility back to them and telling them that ultimately the success comes from their commitment, not from finding the perfect program. What difference is it if someone's got $200 more expensive, $200 more cheaper, if someone's got a couple of extra calls per month? It doesn't really make that much difference. What actually makes a difference is their commitment. Ultimately, the truth is no program works for anyone who's not willing to put in the work. The question isn't which program, which service is best. It's, am I willing to actually commit to this? Fear recognition questions. I'm scared. What if this doesn't work? It's a big decision. La, 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 la. Fear. Like we said earlier, we want to isolate the fear from the prospect. It needs to be separate. Asking questions like, what does fear like to do? Does it make sense for you to listen to fear? Who's speaking right now? Is it you or is it fear? Why is fear speaking to you? Is it worth overcoming this fear so you can actually achieve this goal? Version comparison. This feeds into identity. What version of you puts yourself in a better position? The one who delays for another week or another month because of fear, or the one that realizes they delayed enough and just tells themselves, if not now, then when? Alternative version of this, let's look at the version of you 5 months from now that is making 10K a month, has retired his parents, whatever. Does he, she allow fear to control and dictate his decisions and stay in the same position? Or does he take control of fear, use it as fuel and actually make the hard decision despite on how uncomfortable it feels? Another, we used this one earlier, I've already gone through this, is achieving XYZ goal worth you getting uncomfortable now so you can be more comfortable in the future. Applies to fear and money. Pattern recognition. If we've done a successful discovery process, we've already identified what the limiting belief is. So what are the chances that we achieve this goal if you keep allowing this limiting belief, usually fear, hesitation, whatever, to keep show up? What are the chances of having financial freedom if we keep avoiding risks and keep playing safe all our life? What are the chances? Okay, this is how we deal with fear. Again, I've given you like a bit of an example down there that you can have a look at. And the final most common one, research objections. Two-step process here. People saying they want to do more research. You've got to go through a process of essentially asking and isolating again. We need to like dig for what are they researching? What's behind you wanting to go away and do more research than what you've already done? Often, you really, as a high-ticket closer, you shouldn't be on calls with people that don't even know who you are. They should have had information before they are on the call with you. They should have following whoever you're selling for. They should have had information packs. That's because you're a closer. You're meant to close the deal, not give information. So this stands for if people are already saying they want to go and think about it. So we might want to ask a question like, sure, what's behind you wanting to go away and do more research than you've already done? Or what's really behind you wanting to go away and put time and distance between you and what you want to accomplish? Now, sometimes they might stand their ground and just say, listen, I want to do more research. We'll say, well, when you say more research, are you looking for reasons to do it or not to do it? Because whatever you're looking for, you'll find. Usually they'll say reasons to do it, but you're forcing a choice here, forward or backward, not neutral anymore. They can't hide like, oh, I'm just gathering information. Gathering information does nothing. So if they say they're looking for reasons not to do it, it sort of causes like, it doesn't sound right. It's like, why are you looking for reasons not to do it if you want to achieve something? So they're pretty much always going to say reasons to do it. So you've sort of got this micro commitment here. They're aligned with why they're here, and it gives you power to enter that second discovery. And look back to what I said earlier, to the second discovery. Let's look at some of the biggest reasons why you actually want to do this. Why would that be important for you? Who would that change things for? Getting them back to that emotional place, that emotional state. All right, let's put it all together, the process. Step one, listen for the pattern. What are they actually saying beneath the words? Is it a smokescreen? Do we need to dig deeper? Is it logistical? We need to isolate it. Is it fear? Is it logistic? Whatever. If it's fear-based, let's find out what kind of fear it is and let's reframe it. If there's an identity issue, let's bridge the gap between who they are and who they want to be. Step two, let's create safety. Lower the threat response so they can think clearly. Normalize their feelings, remove sales pressure, position yourself as a helper, not a salesperson. Step three, let's clarify the truth. Do you believe this can work for you? And why? Then we're going to isolate the real objection. Keep digging until you find the root. If that wasn't a factor, XYZ, would you be ready? What else is coming up for you? We need to be testing at every layer. Is this the objection? Is it really? Move on. Step five, reframe the belief. Change how they see the situation. Challenge their limiting beliefs, offering a new perspective. Use metaphors, questions, stories, contrasts. Connect them to the desired outcome. Step six, bridge the identity. Help them see the decision that their future self would make. And finally, empower the decision. So important. Call them to action, call them to a decision, reflect their vision, allow them to step into that version of them. If you actually empower someone to make a decision, guess what's not going to happen? People cancelling the card and asking for a refund because they feel empowered. And that counts for a lot. If you're selling something high volume, and you've got people doing chargebacks and cancellations, that will really hurt your pocket long term. We want people to buy and stay bought. No one ever asks for refunds when they've bought from me, ever. Because they feel good about the decision and they get a service that they actually want. Okay, now we're on to key phrases that reveal beliefs and enable us to recognize patterns. If people say things like, I always do XYZ, like I always take 24 hours to make a decision. That's showing us that they have a fixed identity. They've got rigid patterns. It reveals they're using like identity as armor. Watch out for it. We need to be watching out for all of these things. People say things like, I really need to make a change. I need to speak to my partner. The permission seeking, it reveals a lack of agency, and they're outsourcing the decision. There's I need to, like future tense, I am doing, big difference. People say, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? Fear, catastrophizing, reveals they need certainty. What if this happens? What if X happens? We don't know. We don't know until you do it. That's the choice we have here. Do it, stay stuck. People say, I'm not the sort of person that makes decisions on the first call. I'm not the sort of person that invests this sort of money. Again, it's an identity limitation. Minimizing language. I just want to scale my business. Downplaying importance, creating an escape route. What do you mean by you just? See the language you use there? You just want to scale your business. Quite a big task. Maybe non-commitment language reveals avoiding decision ownership. Key language things to look out for. Now, bringing me on to potentially the most important thing here, the mindset you need to maintain and hold behind objections. Let's go through it. This is what I found has really helped me to handle objections well. It all comes down to mindset. It takes you out of that box of, I'm a closer, I'm going to close people, yada, 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 by having a different mindset, and you close more sales. Two different kinds of ways you can approach objections. Rigid thinking, fluid thinking. The real skill is fluidity. Rigid thinking is, if they say this, then I'm going to say that. And then if they say this, I'll say that. Here's my script for this objection. I need perfect words. You don't need perfect words. You don't. You need the intention behind the words to be on point, and you need to have a well-constructed understanding of where they are and really listen and just have the right words. That doesn't need to be this like pre-rehearsed story about fucking bears walking through the woods or whatever people are using now. Fluid thinking, and these are really good things to have up when you're on a sales call. What belief is creating this objection? Is this fear, logic, or identity? How do I help them see this differently? What question would create more insight right now? Better ways of looking at objections instead of what can I look at to help handle this? Let's see objections as gifts, not challenges. They reveal exactly where the prospect needs help mentally, not delivery-wise. We're starting to see, okay, this could be what's actually held them back from achieving this already. Questions over statements. This applies to all sales calls anyway. Show, don't tell. If you can show them through questioning and allow them to answer their own questions, they will close themselves, because that allows them to discover the truth rather than you just telling them, which people don't like. People don't like being told. Objections is about the way you think. It's often about your beliefs as well as a closer. If you've never invested in yourself, if you don't take massive action, if you run every decision behind your mum or your girlfriend, it's going to be pretty tricky for you to then advise other people to do it. You have to be that person in order to advise other people to do it. Congruence, again. Have that way of thinking, have those beliefs yourself, and it's so much easier to handle objections. You're not memorizing responses, you're learning to think like a psychologist who understands what belief created this objection. What's the gap between who they are and where they want to be, and what is that? How can I help it? What reframe would shift that belief? What identity are they operating from here? Who they are right now, who they want to become? What would empower them to decide from the future self? Secondly, the goal in objections is not to close, but it's to serve. Don't cringe. As closers, we should view ourselves as facilitators of change. We should view ourselves as helping individuals and business get to what they want and help them get out their own way. Because we know what we're selling is the right thing for them. They're just in their own way. When you genuinely care about helping people and overcoming their own limitations, you create authentic rapport, you give yourself permission to be direct, you help them make decisions that serve their future. The big mindset shift, if you can take one thing away from this video, you're not convincing them for your benefit. You're their guide, helping them to navigate past their own limitations. Again, congruence. I've mentioned it quite a few times through this video. Are you the sort of person who's also invested in themselves? Are you holding themselves to the same standards you hold your prospect to? How can you expect to convince someone to invest 10K if you've never done the same? Hard, because you'd essentially be lying, right? What is congruence? Do your thoughts, your words, and your actions align? And finally, detach from the close. I've not actually wrote that down here, but it just came to me. Don't think about the close. Don't think about the commission. Don't think about the sale. This is harder than learning any of this. just being completely detached, being genuinely not bothered whether they buy or not, but wanting to help them will serve you so well. So that's essentially my brain on objections on a Miro board. And I feel as though if you master this, again, if you want it, DM me the word objections on Instagram and I'll send it to you for free. So you can go through it, you can learn it, you can master it. You can never let a deal slip through your fingers ever again. If you want to be a congruent individual who can help people to overcome their own limitations, then you need to overcome your own. Because if you want to become a master in high ticket sales, in sales, and become an elite closer, a 0.01% closer, you often have to have someone looking over your shoulder and helping you. I have many people guiding me through life, through entrepreneurship, and have invested heavily into mentorship. So gain that congruence, invest in yourself, and become the person that you are guiding your prospects to become. If you're on the inside of my program, we have our advanced section here. If you want to lock in like this dude, this cool dude here, then we have all of our advanced objection handling techniques here. But this is all you need. This is all you need, really. The advanced stuff is great and it helps you get that extra 5-10% close rate. But this will take you alone from a 20% close rate to a 40% close rate if you master it. Do the work, DM me on Instagram, the word objections. I'll send it to you completely for free. You can print it off. You can learn it, you can go through it. If you have any questions, either, again, send me a DM on Instagram or drop a comment below this video and I'd love to answer them. I hope that was helpful. Objections. Let's smash them together. Ciao. Listen, I'm going to show you the exact process for you to land your first remote high ticket sales position. There's no theory in this. This is the exact process, literally everything you need to know. The thing about most people nowadays, when they're looking for remote high ticket sales positions, they're going about it completely the wrong way. They're sending out generic CVs, generic DMs to founders and creators, and they're wondering why they're not getting the result that they're looking for. Whilst on the other hand, there's people with no experience landing 5K, 10K, 20K a month roles. Because they understand one thing. To land a role, it's not about being the best closer. It's not about having the most experience. It's about being the best at being noticed. So over this next video, I'm going to break down the exact lead sources you need to know, you need to become an expert of, the exact messages you need to be sending to get responses, what you should be doing if you've got no experience, and also the vetting questions that you should ask offers so ultimately you're not wasting time on rubbish. Stick with me because by the end of the video, I'm going to give you my go heavy approach that pretty much guarantees you should have a remote high ticket sales job in the next 30 to 60 days if you stick to everything I'm going to give you in this video. Because this multi-channel approach means it's essentially impossible for people to ignore you. So if you're stuck in a 9 to 5, if you're earning 3 to 5K a month, you want to get out the UK, you want to travel, you want a remote sales position, this is the roadmap for you. But before I dive into the actual process, let me explain something. Most people who try to land a remote high ticket sales position fail to land one because they approach it like it's a traditional job. They go on Indeed, they see an opportunity, and they just click apply and send a CV across and hope for the best. 500 other applicants. That just makes you a number on a screen. And they wait, and ultimately you're invisible. You're just the same as everyone else. Guess what? A lot of people want remote sales positions right now, which makes them highly competitive, which in turn makes them pretty difficult to get. If you're just going to go down that normal approach and you're just going to send a generic CV out to people, a generic DM, you're pretty much never going to land one if you have that approach. And that's even if you've got sales experience. You could have 10 years of sales experience, but if that's the way you're approaching it, you're going to really struggle. And even worse than this, the best opportunities very rarely get flooded. Imagine this, you're a founder and your business is doing 200-300K a month, you're well established within the info product space, for instance, and you need a new closer. Do you think you're going to waste time going through 500 applications? It takes a long ass time to post a job on Indeed. Do you think you're going to do that? Or do you think you're going to check with your network first? Maybe check with one of your existing closers and say, do you know any other closers that are to the same level as you? That is what happens 99% of the time. That's the game. And once you understand this, everything changes. So here's what we are going to do instead. Instead of waiting to be picked, instead of becoming a generic number and just being added to the pile, we're going to make it so it's impossible for people to ignore you. We're going to essentially build a closer brand around you. We're going to prove that you can sell, even if you've never closed a deal in your life, and deploy a multi-channel outreach system that puts you in front of the right people at the right time. Now, before we go further, I want to get on a level with you. The likelihood is, if you follow this step by step and you land a role, if you do not have the skill set, you will last a few days. If you have a mediocre skill set, then you'll have a mediocre paycheck. So you can get the best role in the world. I could give you a role tomorrow where there's closers earning 30, 40, 50k a month, but if you just slot your average skill set into that offer, you will still only earn 3, 4, 5k a month, because that's ultimately where your skill level is at. So throughout this training, I'm going to point out, on top of the way to actually get these roles, the skills that you also need to master. So once you've landed them, you can actually succeed and hit those 10, 20, 30, 50k a month that you're actually looking for. Okay, so if you want a remote high ticket sales job, you need to know where to look. Not generic job boards, not LinkedIn. I'm talking about the places where the real opportunity lives. These are the exact sources that both myself and my mentees have used to land roles every single month. I'm going to go through 7 key resources throughout this video. Stick around till the end, because the last few are some of the most impactful if you use them right. The first that we're going to look at is YouTube coaches. Here's why. YouTube is full of coaches and course creators who are scaling up fast. They're getting views, they're building audiences, they've all got offers, and most of them need closers badly. But they're not posting job ads. Most of these people are content creators and they're trying to scale. A lot of them are actually taking sales calls themselves. So if you reach out and position yourself as a solution to that problem, taking them away from sales calls that's taking up all the time, then it's going to allow you to stand out. And this is a really quiet market as well. So what you need to do is go to YouTube and type in various sentences that essentially are applicable to coaching. So you could type in like how to start a fitness business, how to start an e-commerce store, how to get your first property in real estate, how to become a life coach. All these like how-to businesses, but you have to get in the mind of your coach, right? So like if someone's a fitness coach, you could also be like how to gain 2 kilos of muscle, how to beat your last high rocks time. If you're a business coach, how to set up Facebook ads. The list could go on. You could do this literally all day long, but if you type these in, you will find these creators and sort them by recently uploaded, so you're not looking at things from 3-4 years ago, because ultimately you want creators who are like gaining traction and haven't fully scaled up yet. So they're in this sweet spot where they need help, but they haven't got like millions of followers right now. You're ideally looking for people with 1k to 50k views per video. They've got active comment section, and ultimately they've got links in the description. This is links to like their Instagram or a school community or a Discord community. These are signals that there's something behind the scenes. They're not just a YouTube creator. They've got something going on, some sort of paid service. So what I want you to do is create a very simple spreadsheet. In one column should be creator name, then the channel link, then their Instagram handle, then maybe the email if you can find it, and then some notes, whatever you need to know, just to give you a bit of a reminder. And then you need to reach out. Now, I'm going to show you the exact outreach system in a minute, but for now, just know YouTube coaches are one of the fastest ways to land in your first role, because they're actively scaling and they will always need closers. So we want to create this spreadsheet and let's add them to it. And we can be doing this search process every single day. An hour a day might generate you 10, 20, 30 qualified leads who you can reach out to. And like I said, I'm going to go through the outreach system in a second, but let's look at the lead sources to begin with. Your second source is going to be Instagram. Now, Instagram is overused and it's used wrong. Even me, with not a great deal of followers whilst I'm recording this video, I probably get 20 messages a week from setters and closers, but how they position themselves is absolutely terrible. I'm yet to see a good application. I've never seen one. So if you play this right, it's one of the most effective channels, but you need to be dialed in with everything. Number one, don't do it from your personal profile. The picture of you drunk out your mind at some party or on a holiday with your grandma, for whatever reason, that is not what someone wants to see when they're hiring a closer. Let's just build a fresh account. Doesn't need followers, doesn't need to be viral, you don't need to create content a day in the life. This needs to be like your landing page. This is almost like your digital social media CV. So we want a polished headshot to begin with. We want a simple bio, high ticket closer, maybe how much experience you've got, if you have any, or how much revenue you've generated. Really simple. Keep it professional. Then let's have a couple of posts on there that are relevant, that position you as a closer. So a great thing would be like a mock call breakdown. Let's put one of your mock calls on there. Screenshot of some of your results if you've already got experience. Maybe some of your philosophies around sales, what training you've undergone, and maybe a couple of posts to show what sort of person you are. So if you're really into fitness, you're really disciplined, let that come through your profile. Again, these don't need to be viral posts, you don't need to worry about it. This is just to present you as this professional individual. Now, here's the actual DM sequence that works. The first thing you need to do is get familiar with sending Loom videos, video messages to people. If you're just sending words, you will never ever break through. And if you do break through, it's probably to someone who's really shit, someone who isn't getting a lot of DMs because they've got time to click on your profile and reply. If you send a video application with a message that's enticing and actually encourages them to look at it, your chances are going to be so much higher, and it also shows that you're different than other people, and it shows how much effort you've put in. So all of a sudden, people are getting 20, 30 messages a week of people trying to be the closer, and then all of a sudden you come along with a video, well presented, you look amazing on camera, and maybe it's not the right time for them right now, even. But guess what? When it is, who's going to be at the forefront of their thoughts? You. So this is just a quick video that you need to record, and you can just say, "Hi, John, I've been following your content. I love what you're building. I'm a high ticket closer. I think I could really help scale your offer. I'd love to chat how I could potentially support your team. Here's a quick intro about me, how I work, what trainings I've had, and how many deals I've closed." Keep it under 2 minutes. Just be genuine. Don't pitch hard. You can also send them a mock call recording to show how you maybe handle objections. And if they're interested, make sure you've got your player card to hand, which is like a one-page resume, but we'll go through that more later. Now, once you've sent the first message, it's important to be following up. If you just send one message, again, coaches' DMs are often flooded. Also, there's appointment setters that live in there. So in order for you to jump to the top of the pile, you need to be sending follow-up messages day 1, day 2, day 3. But let's make these follow-up messages relevant. Show that you're engaged with the content. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. And I don't know how ethical of an approach this is, but it definitely works. And it works a lot better than just sending a Loom video, just sending a DM. And it's a bit sneaky. So with a lot of coaches, they will have a keyword in their bio that means you're interested in whatever product or service they have to offer. So it might be something like start or DM me the word go. So you're gonna engage in a conversation as if you were an interested prospect and just have a conversation. You don't need to explicitly say you're interested. You could just fill it out and put go. I love your content, I love what you do. Could you tell me a bit more about your coaching? How long you been doing that for? It looks like you're doing really well. Starting this conversation. And then at the end, say, are you in need of another closer by any chance? I've been doing X, Y, and Z. Here's a Loom video. Now, some people aren't going to receive this that well, and you might get a couple of people blocking you, but who cares, right? But from the odd coach that you do get through to directly, it's a great way to stand out. And it means you've actually cut through maybe an AI appointment setter, you've maybe even cut through the initial appointment setter, and the actual coach has taken over the DMs, and you've said, if you need a high ticket closer, I'm here. Do it in a friendly way, make sure it's not rude, and that's a great way to sneak through the barrier. Now, here's the third lead source, and this is for people with experience only. And this is a bit more of a traditional approach, but still, it is overlooked. Now, there's a group of companies out there right now which are sales agencies. And what they do is they position themselves for coaches and creators and businesses and provide a group of sales reps. So they're always needing good sales reps. It's a bit tricky to get into these if you don't have any experience. I have seen it done. If you want to look on my profile, you will see an interview between myself and one of my students called Sophie, who had 0 experience. She'd been in the program for 3 weeks. She literally worked so hard and ended up landing a role with an agency. in 3 weeks. But that's because you followed all the steps that I'm going to go through with you later in the video about how to actually present yourself. And she came across that well that they decided to take a chance. And they actually ran with it even though she didn't have any experience. So it is possible, but the chances are you're going to be in a much better position if you do have some experience. Now, an extra tip here, don't just apply through the website. Obviously send an application through the website anyway, but take the name, paste it into LinkedIn, and find people who work there and message every single one of them. All of a sudden, your chances have gone from 1 out of 10 to 3 out of 10. Just small things like this to get your foot in the door and differentiate you from all the other people that are coming forward. It shows interest, it shows tenacity, which are really valuable qualities when it comes to hiring a closer. Now on to the fourth lead source, which is school communities. And we can use school communities in 2 different ways. The first is to actually find closer communities. Literally just go to the search bar, type in high ticket closer, remote sales, sales training, closing, join these active groups. Some of them have small fees, they're like $50 a month, $100 a month. Engage with a network, comment on post, DM people, actually build a network of other closers. And a bit of insider information for you here, the more active you are in these communities, the more comments you send in, the more people you DM in, it works like a real networking group. So if you build a relationship with someone and they've got a role, they'll come to you directly. And you can also post your availability on there, saying that you're looking for your next opportunity. If anyone needs support, please DM me. Simple, direct, effective. Now, onto the second play when it comes to school. This is a similar approach to YouTube, but we're going to try and find coaches on school. And this is what most people miss. They're looking at the same opportunity every other closer is. But school isn't just for closer communities. It's full of loads of different niches where coaches are ultimately building their audience, right? So the system is, the first step, we need to be searching for these niche communities. Things like fitness coaching, business coaching, real estate, e-commerce, health and fitness, sales, marketing, the list goes on. The niches, pretty much everyone on a school community will have some form of a high ticket coaching program. So you could apply to 90% of them and most of them are going to be relevant. The second step is to try and find who the community owner is. This is usually going to be the coach or the creator, and they're building this audience, which means they likely have an offer. Now, start engaging with the community first, especially if it's free. Join in there, comment on a few posts, show that you understand the niche and build some familiarity. And then the fourth step is to actually add them to your Excel sheet again and find them on every platform and fill out the columns and reach out to them directly. And just say, I've been active in your community, love what you're building, I'm a high ticket closer who specialises in their niche. Would you be open to a quick chat how I can support your sales? Now, most coaches in these niche communities are actively growing their business, but they haven't thought about hiring a closer yet. Some of them are still on sales calls themselves. So even if they're not ready now, it's the same principle. You're at the top of their mind when they are. So we want to look for communities that are at the right size, where the owner's actively posting about their offer, the launches and the goals. And by doing that, they're signaling that they need help. This is a gold mine because you're not competing with 100 other closers, you're approaching coaches who haven't actually posted a job yet. Now, this is the fifth lead source, and I'm not going to go too in depth on these because it's pretty obvious. LinkedIn is great. Some of the opportunities on there are absolutely fantastic, but they're competitive. It's as simple as that. I saw an opportunity on there for Tony Robbins and Grant Cardone literally last week. So there is some unbelievable opportunities out there, right? But you've got to be at the top of the pile. And you do that through what I'm going to go through later in this video. And you can still land them. But it's always good to have this multi-channel approach. With Upwork and with LinkedIn, it's very important to have your professional profile. Number one, if you're a high ticket closer, let's have that in your headline as a starting point. Let's not have that you're still a dog trainer or whatever the hell you used to do before you wanted to be a high ticket closer in your job title. Let's scream from the mountaintop that you are actually a high ticket closer. If you have a niche that you prefer to work in, like coaching or agency space, and then put in the amount that you've closed if you have. If not, maybe mention who your mentor is or who's taught you sales, because that carries a lot of weight. adding onto your profile any training that you've invested in, any call samples, your availability. Now, when it comes to Upwork, it's always a good idea to actually boost your budget. So it literally costs you probably about $30 a week. And when you apply to roles, it means that you can bid and be the top bidder. And that means that when founders and business owners open the application sheet, you're at the top. Always bid, always be the highest bidder. And I believe as well you can also sponsor your profile. So if you say high ticket closer, when people are hiring, they will get an advert for your profile even if you don't apply. It's worth just budgeting that little amount every week, and you can get some great opportunities on both LinkedIn and Upwork, but it all comes down to your profile. And a bonus tip here is to make sure that your profiles are public. On Upwork, there should be a toggle where you can say, allow people to search for you. The same on LinkedIn, let's have an open profile. We can also set reminders and job alerts on both platforms so that when a high ticket closer job pops up, we can be the first to apply. And that's really important. Right, on to lead source 6. Again, I'll be honest, job boards are potentially the least effective, but they're still worth checking. There's a lot of good sites out there, Indeed, remote.co, remote job websites. If you're in the UK, ideally search for US job boards too, just because there's a lot more opportunity there and they're a bit more active in this space. You can create accounts on every single job website and set up search alerts. That's the best thing to do. Instead of like checking them once, twice a week, just set up a custom inbox, like charlierhodescloser@gmail.com, right? Sign up to all these job websites and then set an alert for certain keywords. Remote sales or high ticket closer. Take you 5 minutes per job website to sign up, and then you'll get email notifications when things are actually posted rather than having to look through it all the time. But let's not rely on this. This is the lowest priority. Now on to lead source 7. This is the best possible way to land remote high ticket sales roles. And it's your network. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's the age-old phrase. And this space is like any other. If you are networking with the right people in the remote high ticket sales space, then it's the best way to find roles, because when founders need new closers, the first people they ask is the current closers, always. So if you're not in these circles and you're outside of it, it's pretty hard to get in some of these offers. A way to potentially get into these networks is by, on your outreach spreadsheet, DMing existing high ticket closers and having a chat to them and just literally becoming like their online friend and having a small database of 20 or 30 other existing high ticket closers and just becoming like online friends with them. That is a way to do it if you're not going to invest into a community. Now, I'm sure some of you are on here thinking a few different things. Maybe you're thinking, right, Charles, I've been in a sales job for X amount of years, or a corporate job for X amount of years. I don't really know how to close high ticket. Or someone might have no experience and be thinking, okay, great, I could land these roles, but what happens when I actually walk through the door and get on a call and I don't have a framework and I can't handle objections? What's going to happen then? Well, the truth is you will lose the role in a matter of days. If you last a few days, then you might lose it in a couple of weeks. This is different than getting a job with a basic where you're going to be sat next to the manager and they're going to be helping you and training you. To be a successful remote high ticket closer, it's like being a contractor. Well, it is. You are a sales contractor. It's like getting a contractor for your house. You've invited a contractor in to build the house and he doesn't know what he's doing and you're paying him based on the work that he's doing. You'd be like, I'm just going to get another builder who knows what the hell he's doing. Why would I take a chance on someone who doesn't, who's still figuring it out? It's the same thing. That's why inside my program I teach something called the anti-sales method. This is what I've developed over the past 10 years in sales, and I've had 5 years in remote high ticket sales. I've invested tens of thousands into mentorship, and these are the exact frameworks that I've used and developed over that period. Now, this is not surface level stuff that you'll probably find on my YouTube. This is the deep buyer psychology and understanding of how to actually close someone and take them from just interested to giving you the credit card details in an hour call. So if you're actually serious about this, and you're not just dabbling, and you want to become an elite 1% closer, then check the link in the description and you can drop me a DM on Instagram or we can set up a call. But for now, let's keep going. So up until now, you know where to look. You know all the free places that you can find these positions, but what now? And this is where most people screw up, right? Finding opportunities is one thing, but actually getting responses is a whole lot within itself. So let me show you the exact assets, digital assets that you need to build so that you stand out when you're applying to these roles. So the truth is, whenever someone's going to hire you, the first thing they're going to do is check out your online profiles, whether that's Instagram, whether that's LinkedIn. And if it doesn't scream that you're a closer and it doesn't show that you're professional, then you're pretty much done. Now, I'm not asking you to become an influencer. I'm not asking you to get tens of thousands of followers. You don't need that. You don't actually need one single follower. It's just whether your profile speaks volumes and speaks that you are serious about being a closer. So let me break down the exact assets that you need. Asset one, if you're using Instagram as an outreach method, let's have a professional Instagram photo. We touched on it earlier, but quite simple, good photo, good lighting, professional attire. Listen, it doesn't have to be a suit, but let's look clean and sharp. You got a picture on there with, like I got a DM the other day from a guy who was like in a tracksuit smoking a fag, asking if I need a closer. And I'm like, no mate, you're not on brand for me at all. Who you are, what you do, how to contact you. As I said earlier, pretty simple bio, just like high ticket closer, this how much I've closed, DM me for availability. And then a couple of posts, sales tips, call breakdowns, client wins if you've got some experience, or some information on the training you've got. Show your character. You don't even need to post every week. You can literally just put them assets on there and leave it until you land a role. Okay, on to the second asset. This is a one-page resume. I like to call it a player card. This isn't a traditional CV. This is like a sales page for yourself. So what we need to include here in the headline, high ticket closer, if you've got a particular niche that you want to work in, like fitness specialist, and then if you've closed any revenue so far, put the amount of revenue at the top. We want to have a brief introduction about any experience you've got or any training you've got, who you help, what frameworks, what style of selling you use, available time zones. Then onto your skills. Again, mentioning any training that you've done, where you excel in this space, so things like objection handling or discovery process, tonality. Then we want to look at any training certifications. The next thing you need to include on the player card is your experience. And there's two ways we can go about this. If you have not got sales experience, you need to look at what you've done throughout your life and how that can apply to sales. This is really simple. I landed my first sales job by doing this. So I played a lot of rugby growing up. And I spoke about how rugby gave me the discipline and structure and resilience that would perfectly apply to sales. I also ran an eBay store from being 13 to about 19 that was pretty successful, and I talked about how that was applicable to sales, how I was dealing with customers and fulfillment on a daily basis, and I weaved my life experience and applied it to communication and sales. So if you have no experience, you've got to find a way to do that. It's as simple as that. Now, if you do have experience, amazing, but let's not go into the weeds here. What do people care about when they're hiring you? They care about how much revenue you generated for that business. That's the most important thing in bold. Second, roles and responsibilities can be bullet points. We don't need to know what colour the walls are or what coffee you drank. Dead simple, bullet points, roles and responsibilities, and just list them out. Then your contact details, email, phone number, if relevant, Instagram, LinkedIn. Simple. Keep it one page, clean and professional. Now on to the third asset. You should have done at least mock calls by this point if you've got no experience. If you do have experience, you're already a closer, then you should have real calls. And these should make up essentially your mock call portfolio. If you don't have calls and you're just starting out, that's fine. But you should be doing role plays with other closers. So you should be in a network, obviously. If you're a beginner and you don't have any experience and you don't have any practice, then you're definitely not going to succeed. So you should be in some sort of community where you can at least do role plays with another closer. And get your best mock calls, record them, and upload them into your portfolio. So you can frame that in two ways and say, this is a role play call where I'm handling X objection in X niche, or just present it as a call without calling it a mock. And that's if it's high quality. It's very obvious it's a mock call, then probably don't do that. But be honest in the interview. If you're asked and they say, is that a real call? Just be like, no, it's a mock call in my practice community. But if you have got experience and you're already a closer, then just upload real calls. That is the main thing that people want to see. It saves them so much headache, interviews, everything, because they can just click on your profile and watch you kill it. Watch you wipe the floor with objections, do an amazing discovery process, you'll get hired on the spot. But here's a bit of a reality check for you, right? If you don't know how to actually conduct a mock call, and if your discovery process is shit, and you can't handle objections, and you are nervous to upload the mock call, then you're probably not at the skill level to succeed in this industry yet. And you've got to be real with yourself there. You might need to undergo some training so you feel actually confident to upload these sort of videos, instead of just trying to like wing it and sneak in the back door. And that's why learning this craft matters. That's why these frameworks are in place. That's why I teach things like my CARE method for handling objections, staircase method for digging deep into pain. The non-negotiables if you want to be elite in this space. Inside my program, we drill this multiple times a week to make sure that by the time you are interviewing, you feel like you've already done it 100 times before. Okay. If you're interested in getting some extra training, again, just check the link below and drop me a DM on Instagram, or we can book a call. On to the fourth asset. This will be your Loom intro video. This is your personal pitch. A lot of people skip this, and it's potentially the most stupid thing you could do, because this is, I would say, the most important thing. If you decided to ignore everything else that I've said here, doing a professional Loom pitch is the most important, for sure. Because this is how you are perceived on the other side of a screen. And if you are selling things on Zoom, that's exactly what people want to see. They want to see how you present yourself on Zoom, right? Keep it under 2 minutes, dead simple. Hi, I'm Charles. I've been a high ticket closer for the past 10 years. I've closed over $250 million. I've closed for brands like Shetty, Mind Valley, Bedros Keuilian, FXLHG. I recently worked with a Forex trading coach, scaled him from 80K to $1 million a month and managed his entire team of closers. Blah, 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 a bit about the hobbies. If you are interested and my experience feels relevant to the offer that you're working on right now, then I will link my contact details below this video and I would love to speak with you further. Thanks, Charles. Simple. Done. Keep it under 2 minutes. Be confident, be clear, have a clear background. Don't have a dirty pair of knickers behind you. Just, let's keep it professional. Get a good camera, get a good microphone. They cost nothing nowadays, right? Get a decent, I think my webcam that I've used for the past 3 years was $10. And this microphone, I think, was $50. Cost nothing, okay? Fifth asset, simple. Set up an account on Calendly so people can easily book calls with you. Set your availability so people, when you send over your intro videos, when you send over your player cards, you can just link your calendar. People can book a call with you easy. This removes friction. Simple. Okay, you've got your assets. You know where to find these roles. What now? How do we actually turn this into a result? So now it's time to start reaching out and actually making contact with these businesses. And where a lot of people go wrong is just sending one message. They don't follow up, they don't stay at the top of mind, and they assume if someone doesn't reply to the first message that they're not interested, but that's not the case. By nature of things, the best opportunities, the best people you could possibly work with are going to be busy people. It means they've got a lot on. It means they're making a lot of money, right? So it will often take a few times to get their attention. Every time. So if you're doing it once, it's very unlikely you're going to get any results, especially when it comes down to social media. We need to be reaching out multiple times to actually catch their attention. And your job is to stay persistent without being annoying. So let me give you an example cadence of messages that you can be sending to people that's got a nice flow and it's not going to piss people off. Day one, this is where you send your Loom video. That's the first thing you need to send. And what I would do is reference something in their content that you like, that you genuinely resonate with, mention it in the DM and say, by the way, if you're looking for a high ticket closer, I'm experience, I've generated here's my Loom video. It would be great to meet you and set up a call over the coming days. That's message one. Or you can try that sneaky Trojan horse method that I told you earlier, where you can basically send them a message like, hello, could you tell me a bit more about your coaching services? Or mention like a keyword and ask for a free resource and have a bit of a conversation and then send your Loom video. And that might just get your foot in the door, but that's a sneaky one. It does work, but use with caution. Now on to the second day. This is where you're going to send them like a bit of a carrot. You could say, I've just put together a full objection handling process of how I would handle X objection in your industry or niche. Check it out and send it across. I actually landed one of my best roles by doing this. I sent someone a custom script that I really wanted to work with and I landed the position. And a secret here, it's the same script and the same objection handling framework, no matter who you're dealing with, no matter what niche you're dealing with. That's the beauty of high ticket sales, right? So if you're dealing with a fitness niche and you really want to get into the fitness space, you can just send them all the same document. But this is going to really catch people's attention. And guess what? No one's ever sent this to me. I know I'm not the biggest coach in the world, right? But the sort of DMs I get, I would never reply to, because they're just like, yo bro, do you need a closer? That's it, one message. Someone sent me something like this, I'd be like, wow, this guy's really interested. So that's day 2. We want to send that across. So I'd then give it 24 hours and just send a polite reminder. Something along the lines of, hey mate, did you see this? No pressure to reply, I'm just making sure that you've received it. And then we're going to give it another 48 hours, send over our call recordings. And then give it another 48 hours and send over our one-pager document. At that point, they have everything they need from you to make a decision whether you're going to be a good fit. But follow them from your closer Instagram account and just engage with the content. And over time, they will need a closer. And you will be the person that they come to if you approach it in that manner. Now, I want to be very clear here. This does not just apply to Instagram. Instagram has become very competitive with high ticket closing right now. This applies to LinkedIn. This applies to job websites. This applies to school. This applies to YouTube. That same cadence should be applied to every application. And this is where your Excel document comes in handy. When you're building this Excel document with your potential leads, you can say, I've already sent them my player card. Okay, in 48 hours, I need to send them X, Y, Z. And we're keeping on top of it. This is the same with the YouTube coaches. It's the same with the school creators. We're sending a cadence of messages to all of them over like a 5 or a 6 day period, and where they're receiving everything. And you can stay in contact with them. They've got all the information. They've got all your amazing assets. And then it's literally just a matter of time. Spend an hour or 2 doing this every single day. If you've got the time, spend even longer. Just see this as part of the job. See this as part of the closer journey. That for the first 2 weeks, you're just going to be doing outreach. If you do it exactly as I've told you in this video, you will land a position. So it depends how much you want it. Do you really want a life of financial freedom where you can close deals from anywhere, you can travel, you can earn great money? Because all it takes is 2 weeks of hard work and you can land one of these positions. But you've got to do it properly. You've got to have the right cadence and you've got to be hitting the right amount of volume. I would probably recommend trying to apply a message at least 10 people a day, ideally, if not more. If you can do more, amazing. But 10 is going to give you a really good exposure. And now on to the final point, and one of the most important, and this is my go heavy strategy, and this is the multi-channel approach. So let's say we find something on LinkedIn and it looks great and we think, wow, this is the sort of opportunity that I've been waiting for. So we send our first message, we send our Loom video. What then? Do we just wait 48 hours? No. We need to pull the business up. Let's find the founder. Let's find the sales manager. Let's find the sales rep. Let's do it to all of the team. Let's follow all the team on Instagram and send them the exact same message. This is the multi-channel approach. We want to hit them everywhere. The aim of this is to get eyeballs on our assets. Does it really matter if you piss the odd person off? It doesn't. You're never going to see them. You're never going to meet them. It's just about that exposure and getting your name out there. I am still getting replies to things that I sent to people 4 or 5 years ago. Oh, are you still closing? We're looking for a closer right now. Because of the amount of exposure that I got during that short space of time when I was sending all of my assets out, people are still reaching out to me now, and I built a really great network now from doing this outreach. And I always find out about when people need closing opportunities just due to the outreach that I've done so far. The thing is, most people don't check every platform. Like, for instance, I have LinkedIn, but I go on it maybe once every 2 weeks. So if I posted something on LinkedIn and you're trying to get a hold of me on there, probably be a bad idea. But then if you message me on Instagram or email, then you get hold of me. And people have different preferences for different platforms. So maybe you find a coach on Instagram that you're struggling to get hold of because maybe his appointment setter lives in his DMs. But then if you message him on LinkedIn, it goes direct to him. You are not being annoying. You're being strategic, and you are showing that you actually are passionate about landing one of these roles. And founders and business owners respect that. Remember, all it takes is one opportunity to completely change your life. And if you think you found it, then go heavy. Go the multi-channel approach, and that is what will make you stand out. Now, here's something that nobody tells you. Landing a role with this approach is actually pretty easy, but landing the right role can be quite hard. Like, I've seen people take an opportunity and think they're in the right vehicle, and they stay on it for a couple of months only to realise that the leads are shit, the qualification process isn't very good, and before you know it, they've wasted 2 months. Time is very valuable. 2 months wasted is not a good position to be in. I don't want you to waste 3 to 6 months on a rubbish offer. So I'm going to give you the process that you need to vet an offer to make sure that it's going to be right for you and you're going to earn the sort of money that you actually want to. There's a couple of questions that you need to ask in an interview that are really important. The first is we need to understand what the monthly revenue is. And like, monthly revenue shows us how much we can get paid. We get paid on commission, right? So if someone's only earning 20k a month, they're not going to pay you 10k a month. Ideally, you need people that are earning, if you're being paid 10% commission and no basic, you need people that are earning 100k a month and above for it to make sense. Unless someone's paying you 20% commission, then you'd be fine on 50k a month. Or they might pay you a 3k basic, 10% commission, they're doing 70k a month. But you need to do that mental calculation to realise, is this even worth it to begin with? So I'll give you a question that I think is good to ask in this interview process, to ask that in like a non-invasive way. So with enthusiasm, we're like, this offer sounds great. Can I just ask where you're at the minute in terms of like monthly revenue, just so I can get some like targets in mind and know what sort of levels I should be hitting when I'm starting? Simple. Another way to ask that is if they've got a sales team, ask what is the top closer earning? What did he do last month in commission? And that gives you a good benchmark of what you could possibly earn. Another great question is to understand where their lead sources are. Are they doing paid lead sources? Are they purely reliant on organic? And also, what's the lead volume? So this comes down to how many calls should you be expected to take and how many calls are being pre-booked into your diary. Because ideally, you want minimum of 4 calls in your diary every single day. Because then if you're at a 25% close rate, roughly, then you're closing 1 sale a day. And if it's a high ticket offer, then you should be hitting a decent amount and taking home the right sort of income. And within that, the calls, we need to figure out how many are showing up. Do they know the show rate and also the close rate? Because they're 2 very important metrics. And make a note of these, and then you can figure out whether they're serious or not and whether they can pay you the amount of money that you actually want. And a very obvious one, but this is mainly for beginners, ask what your commission structure is. Don't just dive into a role without knowing what you're going to get paid. Now, a couple of red flags to watch out for. The first, if they don't train you and they just like send you a couple of PDFs and then start booking calls into your diary, massive red flag. How are you expected to navigate an entire business if that's how they're going to structure things? Look for like a bit of a process and communication. Even if it's just a couple of Zoom calls with the founder, then that's okay. But they can't be just like booking calls in one day after the interview if you've had no training and no product training. Like, obviously, they're not going to be giving you sales training. That's very important for anyone that's a beginner out there. You don't get sales training on these roles. You will get product training. And then the second thing to look out for is like unclear payment terms and low commission. Try to avoid those things as well. And the third will be Obviously, if they're asking you for any money in the interview process, hang up instantly and run away, or any sort of like pressure tactics. And if it feels a bit weird, like they're sort of like selling to you, maybe just have your guard up and have your wits about you. In the interview, it's important that you can be perceived to represent this brand. So what do you need for that? You need a good camera, you need a good microphone, you need a clear backdrop, you need good internet, and try to get used to being confident on Zoom and in front of camera, and it's going to serve you extremely well. And when it comes down to the interview, show that you are committed to this business, this venture. Founders have invested considerable money into marketing and time into growing the business. And if you're coming onto the call saying, I'm looking to work 1 hour a day, I'm looking to balance this with my other job, this is a side hustle for me, these are not the sort of things people want to hear. Show commitment, show certainty, and show up like you're going to kick the shit out of this for this business owner, and they'll love it. A big thing that I teach all my mentees is to flip the script. And this is tricky if you are a beginner, but for me, when I've ever been on these meetings with people, like I don't even like calling them interviews because I feel like it gives them power. I want to be the person holding the cards because I know my sales skills makes me an extremely valuable asset, and I know that I could pick multiple different companies to work for who would love to have me as their closer. And you need to try and foster that same mindset whereby you are the prize. You shouldn't be sitting there like, thank you so much for this opportunity, thank you sir. It's like, have the power and the confidence to know that you can deliver a fucking amazing job for these people, and this is as much in their interest as it is in your interest. So you should be asking them questions as if you have a choice here, whether you want the job or not. And you've got a couple of questions that you need answering, so you can feel confident to go forward with this, not just them. And they'll respect that. Let me leave you with this. Your effort, when it comes down to this outreach, will directly correlate with your outcome. It's as straightforward as that. High effort, high outcome. All it takes in remote high ticket sales is one motherfucking opportunity to completely change your life. You can go from wherever you are now to earning 10, 20, 30, 40k a month remotely, like I've done, like all my mentees have done. You can do it from anywhere, earn great money, live life on your own terms. But if you're doing this all on your own, you've got to have high effort to actually land it. Now, if you want some help with this, you don't want to just do it all on your own, because it is tricky and the chance of succeeding are a lot less if you're not already in a network. So if you want help to begin with, becoming an elite closer so you can actually perform at the level that's required to be earning those 6 figures a year, that's the first thing that I help with, actually leveling people up when it comes to skill level, teaching them all the frameworks that I've developed over this period, all the training that I've undergone, and directly mentoring you in it so you can perform at that elite level that's required of the best roles, by the way. But if you think you've already got the skills, that's fine. What I also help with is my network, my job board. We're posting about 45 exclusive job opportunities in the community every single week for you to apply to. I also help you as a career coach, guiding you through the interview process, looking at your player card, looking at your intro videos, making sure they're all on point, and getting real world practice. So the only way I've actually got to this level where I'm at now is through practice, through repetition. It's like anything in life, it just comes down to the reps that you put in, and not just like shooting blindly, guided reps. So that is another thing that is within my offer, within the anti-sales method, is me looking over your shoulder and ensuring that as a closer, you're doing everything you need to be doing and where you can be improving and how to get better. So we get you to an elite level, we get everything in place, and then we help you land a role. So if you're serious about becoming a 0.1% remote high ticket closer and you want help landing a role that will enable you to have a life of real time, financial and location freedom, you can either book a call with me below this video or drop me a DM on Instagram. But for now, just take massive action on what I've shown you already, because the difference between where you are and where you want to be is just one opportunity. And if you found this video valuable, then please subscribe and let me know in the comments if there was a particular area that you've got any questions on. If not, ciao for now. If you've reached this point
It means you now have the full skill set to operate at a high level closer. The in-depth discovery, the killer pitch. You know how to actually manage objections. You're a master of tonality. And you also have the ability to land roles independently. The difference now isn't made by having more information. It's made by practice, repetition, and accountability. Actually landing an offer, watching your calls back, refining your tone, switching your pitch around, taking an objective look at how you're handling objections at the minute, and treating every single conversation as a chance for you to deepen your craft. Because the closers who earn at the highest level aren't the ones who know the most and the most fancy tricks. They're the ones who operate with consistency and they just execute the fundamentals. So please take what you've learned here and apply it to your next sales conversations. And most importantly, if you want real feedback and real support and guidance and mentorship from me, then just reach out to me on Instagram. I didn't navigate this path alone, and you don't have to either. Thanks for going through the course. Now go away and close to the level you know you're capable of.